Avenue in Barnet. They suffered stab wounds in the attack and are now being looked after in hospital.
We need to make sure that when people carry out these activities, they feel the full force of the law. People think they can get away with this. The person who firebombed a few weeks ago is out on bail. That's not full force of the law.
This crisis, it's a crisis for all of us. It's not enough to simply say we stand with Jewish communities. Of course we do, but we must show it and act it. And the responsibility lies with each and every one of us, because it is our fight too.
Let's stop importing people from countries where anti-Semitism is the norm. And if our London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, in his infinite wisdom and belief in diversity, thinks that's the sort of diverse view that it's OK to have on the streets of London and the police don't get involved, don't be shocked, and don't you bloody dare claim to be shocked or upset or care about Jewish people being stabbed on the streets of our capital city in broad daylight. This is on you.
You keep getting proven right every single time. Jews are not safe in this country.
Well, absolutely. No one can be surprised or feeling shocked that this happened. No Jew certainly is. I mean, we had Zach Polanski last week saying this was just a perceived threat. Well, we can see this isn't any perception. This is real. This is happening on the streets. This isn't just an anti-Semitic terror attack. This is an attack on Britain, on the Western liberal democracy and values.
The first politician that uses the word shocking, I might just go and throttle him, because this is anything but shocking. It's the most expected thing is almost overdue, if you ask me. Because, I mean, I just left Israel last week. I thought it would be the last time we were woken up by explosions, but clearly not.
The Jewish community is our community, and their safety is our safety. And we have to...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good evening. This is the Evening Exchange. I'm Peter Cardwell. Lots to discuss between now and 10 o'clock. Not least how it's all falling apart for Zach Polanski. It's just 2 days to go until the local elections, and the revelations about the Green leader are coming thick and fast. He was apparently not even a full member of the National Council of Hypnotherapy when he tried to increase or indeed decrease people's breast sizes. He also falsely claimed to be a spokesman for the Red Cross. Those allegations are in the Times today. We're also talking about hate crime prosecution to be fast-tracked after a rise in anti-Semitic incidents. Big summit today at Downing Street that Keir Starmer was taking. We'll have a look at that. We'll also talk about the fact that the local elections see that Labour is under siege in London. We'll talk as well about Trump on Iran, major changes there. Of course, there's been this sort of ceasefire, these negotiations that have been going on. We'll speak to our international editor, Isabel Oakeshott, in just a moment about that. We'll talk as well about Muslims here in the UK. New polling showing what many of them really think, certainly in regard to Jews and indeed to this country itself and our systems of government. There's quite a lot of alarming information in there. Claire Muldoon and Sebastian Selleck on the debate desk, as is now usual on Tuesday evenings, and we'll talk a little bit later on as well about the Iran ceasefire and this horrible story about Sarah Sharif, the local MP, calling for the council to be put into special measures. It's a pretty astonishing story, actually, because the council, you may remember Sarah Sharif, the young girl who was abused and then murdered, absolutely horrendous, and the council won't release bits of information about her father and attacker. Absolutely dreadful. We'll talk as well about woke academics, and I want your views on everything that we're talking about this evening. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a WhatsApp voice note or a WhatsApp text message on the main number. You can also ring me on the main number, which is of course 0344 499 1000. So much to discuss between now and 10 o'clock. Stay with us here on Talk. Well, today in Downing Street there was a summit on anti-Semitism. Finally, the Prime Minister seems to have got the message that things are really bad. Also, Stephen Parkinson, who is the head of the Crown Prosecution Service, has said that anti-Semitic attacks will be prioritised for his workers, the Crown Prosecution Service, to actually go through them and to prioritise those. Now, I think that is perhaps not a bad thing, but at the same time, do you really want to say to other victims of crime that this is more important? It is a very important thing that the government and this police, I would argue, and also the Crown Prosecution Service have not been prioritising and not been looking at properly for the last 2.5 years. So maybe this works, but also we remember what happened in Southport. We remember how many cases were prioritised. And is that something which you think will actually send a message to people who hate Jews? Is that the right thing? Or are you saying to other victims of crime, actually, you're less important? Is it two-tier policing all over again? On anti-Semitism itself, we know, because we've been talking about it on my shows for the last 2.5 years and beyond, about where it comes from, what it is, and what we need to do to get rid of it. It needs a whole society approach. You can't just simply prosecute people, although that's the right thing to do as well. Keir Starmer seems to now, finally, 2 years into his time as Prime Minister, have got that message. Let's have a little look at what he was saying at Downing Street today.
It is also important to recognise that so often this hatred does not begin with violence. It begins with ideas, with misinformation, tropes and conspiracy theories, and with attitudes that, left unchecked, can take root and spread. So in those spaces where the shoots of anti-Semitism begin to grow, we are stepping in.
So let's talk about what Starmer has been saying, not just on that, but also on the crisis in general.
This crisis, it's a crisis for all of us. It's not enough to simply say we stand with Jewish communities. Of course we do, but we must show it and act it. And the responsibility lies with each and every one of us, because it is our fight too. Only by working together can we eradicate anti-Semitism from every corner of society.
Our international editor, Isabel Oakeshott, joins me now. Isabel, good evening.
Good evening. Well, I mean, it's just way too little too late, I think. I would have loved to have heard him make a better version of that speech 2 years ago.
I know exactly what you mean. It's not enough to simply say we stand with Jewish communities. Of course we would, but we must show it and act on it. Where have you been for the last 2.5 years, mate? Where you've been Prime Minister for 2 years. Sort it out.
This is the thing, and it just, as always, it just sounded so hollow. I mean, of course, it's better than nothing, and they are trying, clearly he's trying to do something tangible with this announcement of fast-tracking these types of, as they put it, as it's called, hate crimes. But he has allowed this thing to mushroom over basically ever since he's been Prime Minister. He's exhibited no leadership on this whatsoever, and only now, when things have got so bad that lots of Jewish people are literally leaving the country, and we've got people being killed on our streets and attempted murders, does the Prime Minister finally stand up and say it's not enough just to say we stand with you? I don't know. I feel it feels churlish to say this was pointless, but it just feels as if it was a bit empty.
What is your thought on the prioritisation by the Crown Prosecution Service of those hate crimes for anti-Semitism? Is that the right thing, Isabel? I mean, I do worry about other victims of crime thinking, hold on a second, don't I matter?
I mean, I feel like the wheels of justice at the moment move so slowly anyway.
Totally.
I mean, of course, we all want all crimes to be prioritised for processing through the courts, but there are absolutely horrific alleged murders that take more than a year to get anywhere, sometimes way more than that. And, you know, how do you make those judgments? I think clearly what Starmer is trying to do here is do something symbolic. He needs to be able to answer the question, what are you actually doing about this, with something concrete? But it feels very cobbled together, doesn't it? It doesn't feel like it's any more than an attempt to say, well, we are actually doing this, this and this. I just find it hard to forgive the extent to which this has been allowed to grow to the problem it has. And the idea that he can now, anything this government will, as he put it, eradicate it from our society, is absolutely for the birds. You know, this poison has been sown in fields across Britain, and all it takes is for it to rain and it springs up again, you know.
You're absolutely right. And I mean, it's interesting, actually. There's a very interesting survey we're talking about a little bit later on in the programme about a quarter of Muslims in key battleground seats saying the conflict in Gaza would determine their vote. There are also bits of information, about 9% saying they'd handed their blank ballot paper to other people. 60% reported receiving campaign leaflets not written in English. 52% of Muslims surveyed said it supported making it a criminal offence to depict the Prophet Muhammad. 63% supported banning the public burning of holy books. Almost a quarter said violence could be justified in response to such acts. This is not all Muslims, clearly, but it's quite a lot of them that are saying things that are completely antithetical to our way of life. It's not just Muslims, of course, that are anti-Semitic. There's a lot of useful idiots on those marches as well. There are a lot of people who are horrendously anti-Semitic who aren't Muslim. But this is a clear, present problem in society. And as you correctly say, what the government is saying today is too little too late, Isabel.
I mean, that data is absolutely fascinating, and I'll be very keen to hear more about it as the programme goes on. You know, that gives us an insight into the cultural chasm that has been created in our country by, first of all, not just bringing in so many people from very, very different backgrounds with really different values. And of course, some of them are good people and they really want to be fully and wholeheartedly British and signing up to what we feel, those of us that were born and grew up here, are British values. But unfortunately, what's happened in too many communities is that they've been able to live parallel lives, and that has been totally indulged by the state, not just this Labour government, but a state that has pandered to whole communities where women are really far from equal. You know, they are so repressed in a very un-British way, and people are allowed to carry on using the state and all the benefits that it brings, first whilst not contributing, not being net contributors, but secondly not being able to speak any English. I mean, the statistics on the number of people, these are NHS statistics, by the way, official statistics. 1 million people in the UK speak either not very good English or no English at all. People.
Yeah, it's astonishing. Let's talk about Zach Polanski a bit, who is under fire for a number of reasons. His poll numbers are down quite significantly as well, down 14 points in 1 week after he criticised the Metropolitan Police detaining a suspect. He is more unpopular amongst voters than Nigel Farage, apparently. He's said, The Times is reporting, he claimed online to be a full member of the National Council of Hypnotherapy. He also falsely claimed, apparently, to be a spokesman for the Red Cross. He also liked, much more seriously, several social media posts which accused Sir Keir Starmer of being on the payroll of powerful Jewish people. He liked messages in which Sir Keir was receiving money from Zionist philanthropists and asked, how much does Israel pay him? The Green Party response, wait to hear this. The Green Party response says, Zach makes no apology for highlighting the close relationship between Israel and the Labour government, which has led Labour and Keir Starmer aiming and arming and supporting a genocide, a bit more of an issue than liking some social media posts. This is in the context of various Green candidates who referred to Jewish people as cockroaches, and others spread conspiracy theories about the 7th of October attacks, referring to Zionism as the Nazism of our time. Isabel.
I mean, what are they talking about, suggesting that Keir Starmer is somehow some kind of Zionist puppet? This is the man who stuck his neck out and unilaterally decided to recognise the state of Palestine. What are they talking about? Zach Polanski is a complete and utter charlatan, and the idea of him leading our country is patently absurd. And the more people see of him, the more they realise that. And so many of his so-called followers seem to have no idea when they voted for him. You know, what happened, the result in that by-election in Gorton and Denton being a case in point, that this is a man who stands for things that they are completely opposed to. You know, this is a man who has all sorts of wackadoodle-do ideas. And
on that note, Isabel, sorry to interrupt you, but I think this is very important. Robert Lewis, who's the former of the Lewis Clinic, talking about him being a hypnotherapist, operating on his Harley Street premises, did try to enlarge the breasts of female clients, apparently. Lewis, who knew Polanski, said, it was just one of the things that we did. People knew about it. I did several myself. Defending the practice, Lewis added, actually, what you can get using the mind is 1 cup size up or down.
I have to say I've never tried it, but I'm all ears.
I mean, I'm for the reduction. Let me tell you, if it's me, I'll go there for a reduction. Definitely, my moves are out of control. Anyway, perhaps on a more important note, there are serious issues, of course, in the Middle East. Trump has been talking about this today. This is what he's been saying.
The Middle East would have been blown up. There wouldn't be a Middle East anymore. They would have controlled. They would have taken over the Middle East. Now they're trying to survive, and they won't be successful unless they make a deal. Oh, if they don't make a deal, they won't be successful. They'll go very quickly and methodically. Believe me, it'll be very easy. But we have so many alternatives. It's amazing, and nobody knew this. Because as an example, Japan got 90% of their oil, most of their energy, but most of their oil from the Hormuz Strait. South Korea got 43% of it. By the way, their ship was shot at. They were not in the cavalcade of ships. They decided to go it alone, and their ship got the hell knocked out of it yesterday. But they didn't shoot the ships that were guarded by us, I'll tell you that. We knocked down a lot of missiles.
More strong fighting words from Donald Trump. Isabel, what do you make of it?
Well, it was a bit meandering again, wasn't it? I mean, here in the Middle East, we hang on every word of Trump, wondering what the hell's about to happen next. And it's all very bewildering. Things have been quiet here in the UAE today, and certainly in Dubai, we've had no missile alerts. It was a big shock yesterday when it suddenly seemed to kick off again. We had 4 missile alerts in the space of the evening, 3 in very quick succession. And today has felt like an eerie calm before whatever might be about to happen. We know that the US has moved an awful lot more material and personnel into the region during this ceasefire period. And the big question, the gigantic question is that Trump exercising optionality, maximizing pressure, saying, I have got these assets in the region now, 3 carrier groups and all these men, and mainly men, but men and women and kit. Is that a form of leverage? Is that just about ratcheting up the pressure? Or is it a build-up where he's preparing to go in and has already made that decision? And the truth is, no one knows. I don't think Trump himself knows on any given day where he might go by that evening. But we're sort of nervously braced for what might be about to happen.
Yes, it'll be fascinating to see, and thank you very much indeed to Isabel Oakeshott, Talks International Editor. What do you think of what she said? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call to get your voice on the air. There's a lot of different people who've been in touch, certainly, particularly on this about Zach Polansky, and we know that Caroline Lucas, who's the former leader of the Green Party, has said that statements have now come to light from a handful of the Green Party candidates. They're totally unacceptable and require immediate action. There's no place for anti-Semitism or any hate speech in the party. This is a society-wide problem and needs to be rooted out wherever it's found. I'll take a call from Jill in Cornwall in just a second, but I just want to play a voice note first from Richie in Golders Green. Sorry, Richie on Golders Green on what happened last week. This is what Richie has to say.
Just a quick observation on the government trying to point towards the Iranian regime about the anti-Semitism conspiracy. This has been going on for way over 2 years, and I think there's a lot more homegrown anti-Semitism in our schools and universities without having to deflect towards the Iranian regime.
Richie, thanks very much. Now, certainly there have been attacks by the Iranian regime on people here. A journalist was stabbed about a year ago. We know that there are other attacks that have happened as well that Iran has been involved in, but your point is a good one. Jill has been in touch from Cornwall. 0344 499 1000 is the number she has called. Jill, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hello, Peter. Thank you very much. Well, once again, I'm sick of what's happening. I'm fed up with the fact that we have so many things that need fixing in this country, and things seem to be getting worse. We seem to have more and more people floating across the channel now. Now they're coming from different countries and everything else. I'm just so fed up with it, and I'm fed up with the fact that Keir Starmer, all he does is get on a plane or get on a boat and go to another country to sort them out, give them money, join some sort of society that will help them to sort their problems out.
All these sort of coalitions of the willing. Do you think he's more interested in being an international statesman than domestic issues here?
I think he's useless. I think because he can't sort it out, he doesn't know what to do. He certainly hasn't got the intelligence to sort it out, that's for sure, because he keeps running away from everything. I just don't think that he wants to do it. I don't think he wants to be put in a situation where he will be judged for what he has done.
Well, he's certainly going to be judged on Thursday, Jill. We've got those local elections and Scottish parliamentary and Welsh Assembly elections. He says on anti-Semitism, he says it's not enough to simply say we stand with the Jewish community. Of course we do, but we must show it and act on it. What do you make of those comments, Jill?
Well, what a load of rubbish coming from him. What has he done? On the day this all happened with the Jews, he could have just jumped out the door, run around the corner and gone to speak to the people at the time. But he didn't. As with everything, he's going to sort it out. He will get round to it. He doesn't get round to it. I'm worried for the Jews. I am really. I can't understand why there is this hatred. It's so awful. And we should be doing something, because if we don't, this hatred will turn against the people of this country as well as the Jews.
You're absolutely right. I mean, it's really important anyway that we defend and support our Jewish friends and neighbours. But as a Jewish commentator said to me, I think it was last week, said, they're coming for the Saturday people now and they'll come for the Sunday people after that. Jill, really interesting to talk to you, and thanks for your call this evening. I really appreciate that. Jill in Cornwall there. If you want to get your voice on the air between now and 10 o'clock, maybe something Isabel said or Jill has said, or maybe Richie in his voice note has sparked something in you that you want to get off your chest, you're more than welcome to give me a shout. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Stay with us here on Talk. We'll be on the debate desk in just a second with Claire Muldoon and Sebastian Salak, our usual Tuesday night commentators. So don't go anywhere. We'll be with you again in a couple of minutes.
Is Starmer fueling anti-Semitism?
I don't think he's doing anything to deal with anti-Semitism. The attempt to gaslight the British people and the Jewish community is appalling.
This has to stop. It's almost being normalised, and it's terrifying, and we're sick of it. Enough's enough.
Don't be shocked, and don't you bloody dare claim to be shocked or upset or care about Jewish people being stabbed on the streets of our capital city in broad daylight. This is on you.
Jumbo and Peter Capaldi!
It just so happens that it's
Paul, you're amazing.
Right. Paul! Sir Lenny Henry!
I was face down and the dog sniffed my crotch. It was very, very embarrassing.
Staying out for the summer.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks everybody who's been in touch, including Rachel, who says, good evening, Peter. Good evening, Rachel. Totally agree with Isabel. The stance Starmer is trying to make now on anti-Semitism should have been done 18 months ago. Totally agree with you, even longer than that, perhaps even on day one. Patrick in Nottingham says this muppet of a Prime Minister should have said this 2 years ago. The ace-hole even needs someone to write a speech because he can't say it from the heart. What, ace-hole, right, okay, got it. What a pathetic party before country, shallow champagne socialist. Don in Chelmsford says you have been around politics for long enough to realise what's happening with Zach Polanski. Once a politician raises their public profile, scrutiny follows. That's right, and I don't expect politicians to be absolutely perfect, but I do expect them to tell the truth. And if they're saying and denying things that they've done, well, that's an issue. Penny in Essex says, good evening, Peter. Good evening, Penny. That list you read out of the views of Muslims is not good at all, and yet the government are not only allowing thousands of migrants in, but actively encouraging them with all the benefits they have no right to. The majority who are Muslims, which are even more concerning for the Jewish community. It's madness, says Penny in Essex. Thanks for all your views. Keep them coming in. 87222 for texting, and of course you can WhatsApp or give me a ring on 0344 499 1000. I want to go to the debate desk now. It's Tuesday night, so Claire Muldoon is here, as is Sebastian Selleck, political commentators both. Lovely to see you both. How are you doing?
And you too, thank you.
You're all right. Let's just have a little look at what Starmer's been saying about anti-Semitism at Downing Street, at the summit at Downing Street today.
It is also important to recognise that so often this hatred does not begin with violence. It begins with ideas, with misinformation, tropes and conspiracy theories, and with attitudes that, left unchecked, can take root and spread. So in those spaces where the shoots of anti-Semitism begin to grow, we are stepping in.
Tropes, conspiracy theories, things that people put online, for example. Maybe someone talking about Sir Keir Starmer receiving money from Zionist philanthropists. How much does Israel pay him, for example? Some people have said. Maybe people standing for the Green Party, for example, who refer to Jewish people as cockroaches. Maybe another person standing for the Green Party suggesting that people spread conspiracy theories about the 7th of October attacks, referring to Zionism as the Nazism of our time. Yes, really. Maybe there, how much does Israel pay him? All these kind of tropes, many of which, not the ones I've just been talking about, the people being arrested for, but other ones as well, that Zach Polanski has liked online. Sebastian, you're a former Labour councillor. Tell us your thoughts on this.
It's really concerning. I mean, he will say that he is Jewish and therefore is, I would imagine, immune from all of this. I don't think that counts at all. I think a lot about Jeremy Corbyn and the big debate about whether he was anti-Semitic, and to my mind, that didn't matter because he allowed it to fester within the Labour Party, to our great shame, only a few years ago. And I think this is going to play out again in the Greens, not least because many of the people who are in the Greens now are people who left the Labour Party during that time. They're people with very, very questionable attitudes, very objectionable views about Jewish people, some of them. You see it online, you don't have to go very far to find these views, and you need to take a very firm stance against it, and we're not seeing that from Zach Polanski, sadly.
And I care, you care, Claire cares, but does the electorate really care? The Greens are going to do really well on Thursday unless everybody's wrong. Caroline Lucas, the former leader of the party, tweeting, statements that have now come to light from a handful of Green Party candidates are totally unacceptable and require immediate action. There's no place for anti-Semitism or any hate speech in the party. This is a society-wide problem and needs to be rooted out wherever it's found. Caroline Lucas is a good person. I disagree with her in many things, but she's someone with a lot of integrity. But when she says there's no place for anti-Semitism or any hate speech in the party, I'd love that to be true, but it's not true.
I don't think it's true in any party, to be honest with you, because it's not true of society.
Yeah.
And political parties are supposed to be representative of society's views and norms and whatever. Even Mothin Ali, the deputy Green leader, called out anti-Semitism from the party as well. Did he not? Did he not refer a couple of the Green MPs.
He certainly, there are battles within the Green Party. I mean, he went to the Al Quds protest, for example,
Well,
and, you know, I think there are many questions about him.
Exactly.
But Shara Ali, for example, the former deputy leader, is someone who says there's a real problem with anti-Semitism in that party.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very concerning. I wonder if we could take a wee look actually at a story we're going to talk about a little bit later on in the programme as well, with someone who describes themselves as a former Muslim. This is about some polling that has been done. Let me just see if I can find this exact piece of information, which is about it's a poll of Muslim voters in key battleground areas who said the conflict in Gaza would determine their vote. A greater proportion than those who said the economy, housing, healthcare or crime would be the deciding factors. Only about 5% of the public overall who believe that the war in Gaza is the number 1 issue. This is a poll we're going to talk about later on. 3 in 5 of these Muslim voters, it's not all Muslims by the way, it's Muslims in particular areas, this is the polling that has been done, said they would consider backing pro-Gaza independent candidates to prevent Labour winning locally. Half would consider supporting the Green Party to do so. Quarter of Muslim respondents said they had a favourable view of the prescribed terror organisation Hamas, while more held a favourable than unfavourable view of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in Iran.
I mean, that's just hugely worrying. It really is. And the fact that the IRGC is not even prescribed in this country yet. We are so behind on so many of our geographical neighbours and indeed our continental allies. I just cannot believe that for a minute. And this is deeply worrying because we know that Muslim strongholds in terms of votes, especially in Yorkshire, like Bradford for instance, there's a lot of coercion. Tower Hamlets, another local council to here, postal votes being misused, coercion of families to vote the way that traditional men wanted to vote.
On that exact point, the survey raised concerns about electoral practices. 14% of Muslim respondents said they had a postal vote collected by a campaigner. 9% said they handed their blank ballot paper to another person.
I mean, that's just ridiculous.
16% reported receiving campaign leaflets not written in English.
This is not why people died in wars, to give people the vote, for goodness sake, for it to be manipulated and misused the way that it is.
Well, in a sense it is. I mean, look, I think that kind of manipulation is terrible. You shouldn't be handing your vote to somebody who's going to go and give it away. But if you want to vote on Gaza, that's your right. Whether you and I think it's an important issue or not, that's what democracy is. We can't force other people to care about the issues we care about.
But isn't it concerning? But isn't it? I mean, look, it's an issue. I totally get that, and people have very, very strong views on it. But if that's your number 1 issue,
exactly,
a foreign conflict, which is
nothing
to do with, well, it's nothing to do with bin collections, it's nothing to do with potholes, social care.
Well, this is my great pet peeve, and I have to be careful what I say now because we're bound by electoral rules. But there are many, many people who vote on national issues, whether that's Gaza or whether that's anything else. And you're right; they have to be thinking about who's going to empty your bins, who's going to sort out antisocial behaviour, who's going to clean up the streets. That's what a councillor does. They cannot lobby on behalf of you. That's what your MP is for.
Yeah, exactly. This is a survey of 1,006 British Muslims in areas including Greater London, the West Midlands, Greater Manchester and West Yorkshire, and the poll suggesting that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict driving this shift, particularly among younger voters. Thank you to Michelle, who has messaged in and says, sorry Peter, it has to be called out. This level of hatred for Jews and the native people of the UK comes from one place. We all know it by now. My late mother was Jewish, so I get it. But our people are all being attacked. We need to stand together. The hate in these mosques, even in Birmingham, our second city, an imam on video preaching about how to stone a woman to death properly under Sharia. It's about time people wake up. That Islamist culture is insidious. Michelle, I agree with every single word of that, and we are going to be talking about that later on in the programme. We're going to take a break now. Lots more to talk about, including 1 million children who are going to be claiming disability benefits next year. The whole welfare system is in a crisis at the moment. We were talking yesterday about over 600,000 homes receiving more money than the average worker's salary of £32,200 a year. Stay with us and let us know your thoughts too. 0344 499 1000.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Right then, let's talk about children and disabilities. A record 1 million children will be on disability benefits by next year. This is amid a sharp rise in claims linked to behavioural issues. This is fresh forecasts for the Department of Work and Pensions showing that the parents of 1.03 million children will be receiving support to help their children live with a disability by 2027. That's up from around 900,000 currently. We spoke yesterday about statistics and research that shows that over 600,000 homes receive more money than the average salary, £32,200 a year. Claire, I know you have strong views on this. What would you like to say?
Well, I do. Just firstly, as a standpoint, I think the figures really suggested are quite disingenuous. And I think that way because I don't think it's fair or just to compare a family unit household income of one person if they were living by themselves or if they were one other person in a house on national minimum wage.
Although you often
of
have families where only one parent works, for example, so there will be people four people in a home living on that amount of money.
And they will be getting other things as well. If they've got children, they will be getting other benefits. It used to be called family allowance.
Yes.
They will be getting other benefits
Child
as
tax
well.
credits,
Yes,
I think, yes.
So they will be okay,
Mm-hmm.
right? They'll be like the rest of us trying to get everything onto thingy. But this story, however, really rackled me this morning because this jump from 900,000 children to get benefits. Now, this is benefits to the home because the parents have taken them for a referral for a label, Peter, for a label. That label could be ADHD, it could be anxiety.
It's not more than a label if it's diagnosed.
Well, it's not genetic. Right?
Okay.
You've got fidgety children.
But anxiety is a thing. Do you not believe ADHD is a thing?
I do believe it's a thing, okay, but I think it's being over-diagnosed. And we need to look at the reasons why these issues are being over-diagnosed. I'm quite sure every single one of us, if we went through the pro forma of, the tabulated form of, does it present like that? What's your... We'd all be somewhere on a spectrum, I'm sure.
Well, that's the definition of a spectrum,
But that doesn't mean to say you should be getting extra money for it. Because if we then start labelling children the way that we are now, so heavily doing it now, these children are going to think they can do whatever they want because everything's fine because I've got ADHD or I've got a label or whatever.
Sebastian, what do you make of this?
I don't think that's the case, and you have to look at this in context. This is a multi-decade trend. We've seen these numbers eking up by, and I think it comes alongside greater awareness of these conditions and a greater understanding of them, and that's a good thing. If you are able to take a child who behaves in ways you don't understand and suddenly be able to create a paradigm whereby they have ADHD,
your child
you're going to give them
you have a
better
child,
chances in
the
life.
child then fits into your life, not the other way around. And of course you will have people listening and watching, Peter, that will say, oh, my child's very, very much... I'm not talking about them. That's not the majority. We know that's not the case.
Can I just ask Sebastian, if over half a classroom, for example, has an ADHD diagnosis, the majority of children, doesn't that kind of render the diagnosis pointless to a degree? Because at what point do you actually say this is a thing, and what do you say this is just how children are acting these days, perhaps because of screens or whatever?
Oh yeah, I think screens have a big part to do with this, and I experienced this personally. My attention span is shot because I'm addicted to my phone, as we all are, and that has real consequences. And if you have,
you speak for yourself.
This is Claire going on her phone. It's interesting though, isn't it? Because we often say, oh, children need to be on screens less. Maybe adults need to be on screens less.
Well, they do. Where do the children learn from?
Maybe we should practice what we preach as well. It's interesting on anxiety. I've mentioned this before on air actually. I was sitting beside a doctor a few years ago who said that he works in a university town, and she says, like clockwork, every kind of April time, she has students from the university coming to her saying, I've got anxiety, can I have pills for anxiety?
Dissertation due,
yeah.
End of year,
exams.
Finals.
And she says, no, because you've got exams coming up. This is anxiety. People feel a bit anxious
See, the problem,
about exams. That's a normal thing.
You've hit the nail on the head, because what we're doing then is normalising feelings of risk. Right?
Yeah.
And we need to manage that as a society. As a parent, you really have to manage it. And if you've got a child that's sitting there fidgeting, not doing what they're told, well, woe betide me. It was either a look or a slap, and that sorted them.
I would not have.
I hear the gallery laughing there.
Yeah, I hear a couple of people laughing there. They're laughing probably out of fear.
Because they're going to get a slap.
They're going to get a slap.
They're going to get a slap.
32-year-old James Liney is going to get a slap in a minute. The producer of this programme. Someone rang him actually. Someone rang up just to wish him happy birthday. Isn't that lovely? Happy birthday yesterday. Sebastian, do we need to get parents to be parents a bit more? Do we need to actually say, hold on a second, schools and the health service can't solve everything?
I think the part that parents have to play in this is developing in the child an understanding of how it's feeling.
Sebastian!
No, let him talk.
Look, this solves the problem that you raised, because yes, you might get anxious about an exam, and yes, that might be normal, but it's for the child to understand that this is a normal part of life. But if I go through this prolonged period and I feel very, very unwell, then I need to get help for that. And it's something that I've experienced personally. Until, even a year ago, I didn't have a good read on what my mood was. And so I would slip into a depression. I sat in one for a decade because I didn't realise what it was. And now I can read that. And if I have a bad day, I know it's a bad day. If it goes on for longer, I know I need help. And I wish I'd learned that as a child.
Children have feelings, Claire.
Do they?
Yes, they do.
Really?
Yes. I mean, surely we should be cognizant of that, even if we are being disciplinarians. What do you think?
No, the feeling is that I feel sick. Okay, fine. You get a day off, so you have a nice sofa bed. You're looked after. That's it.
Okay.
My way or the highway.
Okay.
Right?
Yep. Julie Hartley-Brewer told me one time, I hope she doesn't mind me saying this on air, that she was, one of her daughter's friends was over when they were a bit younger, and they said they weren't eating their broccoli, and she said, that's okay, that's absolutely fine. I mean, no problem if you don't eat your broccoli, that's absolutely fine. Obviously, sadly, if you're not hungry enough for broccoli, you won't be hungry enough for the ice cream we're having in a minute or two. And suddenly it was eaten.
Exactly.
So,
But from the parents' point of view, if you've got parents that are part of the benefit culture and they see, oh, okay, I can get extra money if X has got ADHD, go take them along. They ended up getting more money into the family, and also then puts them at a higher grade for admissions to the schools that they want to get into. You've got children at care, then you've got send special educational needs children, then you've got siblings, and then you've got the rest of it.
But if, as Peter says, half the class has it, then what benefit is that?
Exactly.
It puts you at no
so
advantage.
we need to stop.
Is there a way back on this, Sebastian? Is there a way to actually say
parent your children?
We're perhaps
that's the way to do it.
Over-diagnosing to some degree,
we are.
And we're you have a lot of people who don't want to go into teaching, for example. You have a lot of people who are very hesitant about intervening in any way or disciplining a child or worrying about how that'll be viewed. Just tell us your thoughts on this and how we kind of solve this problem.
I think we have to look at it in context. I mean, look at where the world is now. So many people go to work, do a boring job, come home, look at a screen, eat bland food, go to bed and do the same again. And it's the same for a child. And in that sense, and this is maybe a bit radical, but can you blame a child for feeling a little bit different, for wanting to rebel?
No, I mean, but hold on. A lot of being a child is being bored. I was bored as a child
that's
a lot,
very true.
but children are seldom bored these days, because the moment they're bored, they moan, and then someone gives them a screen.
Yes, but that screen isn't an additive existence to them, is it? If it's mindless consumption, well, it's not doing anything to stimulate them in a helpful way.
It is stimulating their they're having dopamine hits when they're playing games and so on. But I mean, I was pretty bored as a child. A lot of my childhood was quite boring. But then you're creative, and then you think about different things that you're doing.
And you ended up at Oxford.
Well, they slipped through the net. We have a voiceover from Tristan who's been in touch on Keir Starmer.
I just don't know what the limit is, what Starmer's going to actually allow. I mean, he says about we've got to do something, but he's not doing anything. I mean, he could actually ban the Muslim Brotherhood, doesn't do that. Could actually ban the IRGC, doesn't do that. He could actually say no more pro-Palestine marches, doesn't do that. He could actually really enforce law and order on these marches, on these attacks, he doesn't do that. He doesn't really do anything. He just says words. And the words are absolutely meaningless. So I just wonder what it's going to take for him to actually stand up and take notice, because he doesn't seem to do anything. He just seems a useless coward that just goes to every other country and just ignores the one that he's apparently supposed to be governing.
Sebastian, is your party leader a useless card?
No, not at all. We've got record funding for anti-Semitism across security, across education, across institutional interventions going into places like the NHS and rooting out into anti-Semitism. We've got Palestine Action prescribed. We've got a promise now to prescribe the IRGC.
Have we?
Was a Yes,
Yeah,
he
it's
said
going to
he'll
be at the King's Speech,
he'll do it
probably,
in the
yeah.
next parliamentary session. There was a legal hurdle to that, which is why it hasn't happened earlier. A lot of actions being taken, and remember, this is a man who rooted out anti-Semitism from the Labour Party, who has a Jewish wife, who feels a personal mission to do this. So I do not doubt...
There's a lot more he could have done over the last 2 years.
Well, I mean, there's a lot that he already has done. There's always more you can do on this issue. There's no point at which we're going to say that's too much. That's too much of a stand against anti-Semitism. So you can always make that argument.
Ronald Wood in Newcastle upon Tyne has a question for you, Sebastian. He says, "Can you ask Sebastian if the Labour Party is his church and Keir Starmer is his archbishop? His defence of the government is ridiculous." How would you respond to Ronald?
Ronald, I don't have any emotional attachment to the Labour Party. I didn't grow up in it. My parents weren't taking me out canvassing at the age of 5. I came to it because I genuinely believe it's the greatest vehicle for good in this country. And I know it doesn't always feel like that, but I defy you to point me to anything else. Governing is hard. Governing in 2026 is even harder. And I would urge you to allow Starmer to see out his term before we make an assessment on exactly how well he's done.
The leader of Welsh Labour has apparently turned on Keir Starmer. He could cost the Labour Party the Senate, the Welsh Assembly, for the first time in his 27-year history. The First Minister of Wales has warned. What do you make of that, Sebastian?
I mean, if it happens, it's just a greater sign of how much politics is changing. I mean, we saw the Caerphilly by-election, didn't we? Was that last year? And that was a devastating result for Labour. I think what it tells us is that no vote can be taken for granted. No seat is a safe seat. The tectonic
But it's significant. You know, you've had Anna Sarwar in Scotland, and now you've got Eluned Morgan in Wales. This is 2 days before a big election for Wales, for Scotland, and for the locals as well.
I don't think the two are connected, though. Anna Sarwar made a political misstep, didn't he? It was that big day where he thought the government was going to fall.
You still factually got the leaders of both Labour in Scotland and in Wales saying the Prime Minister's a liability. Baroness Morgan saying Labour could lose control because voters want to protest against Starmer. There's a danger that could happen.
I think they also want a rise in independence, both for Plaid Cymru and SNP. That's why we've seen this, because people don't want reform in Scotland. They really don't. Because of the candidates that they've put up have just not worked out at all. In fact, even 3 days ago or 2 days ago, Dr Tim Field, I think it was, rescinded and is standing as an independent. And Labour are just, because, not in spite of, but because of Keir Starmer, Labour is going to be wiped out. And we all thought that Labour would be the saviour for Scotland because they were the ones that would keep the SNP at the door. SNP are polling really, really well in Scotland at the moment.
Final thought from Sebastian before the break?
Just none of this comes as a surprise to me. We were talking about this before Labour won the general election. We were saying as a council it's going to be a really difficult election in 26 because we were 2 years into government if we win. And we didn't know how those 2 years were going to go.
The scale of the losses that are forecast are far worse than could conceivably have been expected, especially when you had a huge majority. 411 Labour MPs
but it's just
elected
a normal
in 24.
part. You look at every government in Westminster.
You can't explain it away like that, Sebastian. It's more than that. It's more.
Do you know what I think we should be doing, actually? I think because of these locals, I think we should be going to proportional representation.
That's a whole other debate, which we'll get into in a minute. We're going to go to a break now. There are a few people who've given us a call on ADHD and want to speak to Claire about that. I'll get the popcorn ready. Stay with us.
Starmer fueling anti-Semitism?
I don't think he's doing anything to deal with anti-Semitism. The attempt to gaslight the British people and the Jewish community is appalling.
This has to stop. It's almost being normalised, and it's terrifying, and we're sick of it. Enough's enough.
Don't be shocked, and don't you bloody dare claim to be shocked or upset or care about Jewish people being stabbed on the streets of our capital city in broad daylight. This is on you.
Kush Jumbo and Peter Cardwell.
It just so happens that it's all "you're amazing."
Right. Paul White! Sir Lenny Henry!
I was face down and the dog sniffed my crotch. It was very, very embarrassing.
Staying out for the summer.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Roisin is in London and has given us a call on 0344 499 1000. Roisin, you're with me, but also with Claire Muldoon and Sebastian Salek. What would you like to say this evening?
First of all, great show, Peter, as always.
Thank you.
Very interested listening to the comments, particularly about ADHD. And I just wanted to give you my own personal experience of this. This was about 25 years ago. Had a lovely, bright, loving little boy. Started primary school, and in the first year, the teacher said, "Oh, what a great child." Went to the parents' evening. "Oh, he's marvellous. He's wonderful." Dead chuffed. Second year, the problems started, and the teacher called us in for a meeting, and she said, his behaviour, it's just so bad. I want him to have an ADHD assessment, and we were quite shocked at this. So we went through the motions, filled in all the forms, and like Claire said, when we were filling these in, we thought, well, I do this. It was like, does he do this always, sometimes, never? We looked at all the tick boxes and thought, well, I could tick most of these some of the time.
So and did his behaviour change? Was he significantly different?
No, he was fine at home. He was the same great kid, incredibly bright, and I suppose challenging in the sense because he was
bright.
Yeah. So we were quite devastated, and they wanted to medicate. I said absolutely no way. Luckily for him, and we moved house and moved school, and I spoke to the teacher and I said, he's had this sort of diagnosis, and she said, "Oh, don't worry about that, he'll be fine." And came back to us a few weeks later and said, "That child needs firm handling." He's very bright. And what they did was they put him up to Year 5 and Year 6 maths.
Wow, okay. And that challenged him?
Challenged him. It was fine. We had sort of challenging issues again because by the time he got to Year 5 or Year 6 himself, he had sort of outgrown the maths and the challenge was no longer there. But to cut a long story short, he ended up going to Oxford.
Wow.
And,
so he just needed to be challenged. And I wonder, I mean, stay we are just a second, Roisin. I'll get a reaction from Claire and from Sebastian, then I'll come back to you. Really interesting that, Claire, isn't it?
Hugely interesting, and I don't think Roisin is the only parent to have gone through that with an exceptionally bright child. And I just can't, think that you've done such a wonderful job in going against the grain of not medicating your child, Roisin, and actually just knowing your child. And I wish if more parents knew their own children and could work in partnership with the schools, it would make it so much better for the child. It has to be child-centric. It's your pride and joy. You've given birth to this child that's yours, that you love, that you want the best for it, because that's, as parents, is what we do. But that, I think your child is exceptional, and I think you've been a wonderful mother to your child. But you're not the one, Roisin, that's wanting your child labelled. You're not the one that's wanting your child labelled to get into schools for a beneficial increase in payments for benefits. That's the difference.
What do you make of this, Sebastian?
Yeah, I mean, look, from what you say, Roisin, it sounds like that was the right decision for your child. I also know many people who have medicated for ADHD for the first time as adults and have seen a level of mental clarity that they've long since forgotten. So there are some people for whom it works very well and some people for whom it's best avoided.
Roisin, what do you think of what Claire and Sebastian have said there, just briefly, if you would?
Well, the ironic thing is that I work in education myself.
Okay.
And I know the difference between, there are genuine cases. I know there are genuine cases. But I knew it wasn't my child. And like Claire said, it's understanding your own child. And I mean, he's almost 30 years of age now. And still, when I chat to him, I say, how's work? And I know that he gets bored easily and he needs a challenge. And, it's just the way we're built. It's just our makeup.
Did he study maths at Oxford? Was that what he studied?
No, he did engineering science. But obviously
even more difficult.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to say that it's all about knowing your child. And I wish more parents would sort of resist the idea that medication is a solution.
Yeah. Great call, Roisin. Listen, thank you very, very much indeed. That's Roisin.
And I'm really glad that you're raising this issue. It's so important.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. That's Roisin in London there. Great call. And to be brutally honest, the debate desk went in a very different direction this evening to the one I think we were perhaps thinking it would. But a huge thanks to Claire Muldoon and Sebastian Salek, political commentators. Both really appreciate you joining us. And I expect we'll have one or two things to talk about, maybe a little bit more traditionally political next Tuesday when we see the fallout from those local elections, which are of course happening in England, many parts of England, on Thursday, and full coverage on Talk of that as well, on the Scottish parliamentary elections and Welsh Assembly elections as well. Really interesting. The leader of Labour in Wales, the First Minister, Baroness Morgan, Alden Morgan, saying that Keir Starmer is a liability, essentially. I'm paraphrasing. Lots to talk about on all of that. We'll also talk about this very interesting survey of Muslim voters in key battleground states. We're going to speak to Nuraya Khan in just a minute or two about that. Very, very interesting stuff. And tell us your thoughts too. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
At 11:16 this morning, two men, aged 76 and 34, were attacked on Highfield Avenue in Barnet. They suffered stab wounds in the attack and are now being looked after in hospital.
We need to make sure that when people carry out these activities, they feel the full force of the law. People think they can get away with this. The person who firebombed a few weeks ago is out on bail. That's not full force of the law.
This crisis, it's a crisis for all of us. It's not enough to simply say we stand with Jewish communities. Of course we do, but we must show it and act it. And the responsibility lies with each and every one of us, because it is our fight too.
Let's stop importing people from countries where anti-Semitism is the norm. And if our London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, in his infinite wisdom and belief in diversity, thinks that's the sort of diverse view that it's OK to have on the streets of London and the police don't get involved, don't be shocked, and don't you bloody dare claim to be shocked or upset or care about Jewish people being stabbed on the streets of our capital city in broad daylight. This is on you.
You keep getting proven right every single time. Jews are not safe in this country.
Well, absolutely. No one can be surprised or feeling shocked that this happened. No Jew certainly is. I mean, we had Zach Polanski last week saying this was just a perceived threat. Well, we can see this isn't any perception. This is real. This is happening on the streets. This isn't just an anti-Semitic terror attack. This is an attack on Britain, on the Western liberal democracy and values.
The first politician that uses the word shocking, I might just go and throttle him, because this is anything but shocking. It's the most expected thing is almost overdue, if you ask me, because, I mean, I just left Israel last week. I thought it would be the last time we were woken up by explosions, but clearly not.
The Jewish community is our community, and their safety is our safety. And
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Just gone 8 o'clock. Thank you so much for your company. Lots to discuss between now and 10 o'clock. A fascinating survey, poll of British Muslims. They rank Gaza over the economy. Gaza is the most important issue to the Muslims who were polled in key battleground areas with the local elections coming up on Thursday. Very, very interesting to talk about that. A quarter holding favourable views of Hamas, the terrorist organisation. We'll talk about that in just a second. We'll also talk this hour about anti-Semitism, about what Keir Starmer is doing. We'll get to your calls as well. Lots of people want to get in on all sorts of things, like Zach Polanski, who is under pressure for further things that seem to be untrue. He claimed he was a spokesman for the British Red Cross. He also wasn't a member of the professional body of hypnotherapists that he should have been when he was convincing people they could enhance their breast sizes. We'll talk about Iran. We'll talk about postal votes as well. ADHD is a big one, came kind of slightly out of nowhere, and Claire Muldoon was talking a lot about that a minute ago. We'll talk about the US too. We have a guest there in Washington talking about what Trump is doing and saying in regard to Iran. As always, I want your views on the air. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a WhatsApp voice note, or you can send me a WhatsApp text message on the main number. You can ring me on the main number as well, 0344 499 1000. So much to discuss between now and 10 o'clock. Stay with us here on Talk. Matt in Shrewsbury's been in touch about the overdiagnosis of ADHD. He says this could be this could be to do with cautious doctors not wanting to make a mistake. As we know, accountability these days, says everyone by the short and curlies. Screens and lazy parenting are the most likely cause, as well as sweets, says Matt in Shrewsbury. Dawn in Durham says, I've two autistic boys and don't claim a penny to help with their care. My children are my responsibility, full stop. My husband and I work around each other and take parental responsibility. Great show as always, says Dawn. Well, Dawn, thank you for that. We'll continue to talk about that issue. As you know, it was interesting actually, because of course that ADHD wasn't even on the running order at all. But as I always say, this is my show, but it's your show too. You want to talk about it, you give us calls about things you want to talk about, well then we talk about it. If it's on the running order and it's not, who cares? What does it matter? If you want to talk about it, we will talk about it. One thing I'm sure you will want to talk about is a very, very interesting and very concerning survey that has happened in particular areas. I need to hasten to add, it was 1,006 British Muslims in areas including Greater London, West Midlands, Greater Manchester and West Yorkshire. And the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, Gaza being one of the main issues for Muslims. A quarter of the Muslims surveyed hold favourable views of Hamas, which is a prescribed terrorist organisation. More hold a favourable than unfavourable view of the IRGC, the Iranian, horrible, dreadful Islamic Republican Guard organisation that represses and tortures, murders so many people. 1 in 7 hold a favourable view of Islamic State or Al-Qaeda. 14%, now we know that obviously in the local elections coming up. There are many independents running. There are many members of the Green Party who have, there are many Islamists who are part of the Green Party, and we know that 14% of those surveyed in this survey, in this poll, had a postal vote collected by a campaigner. 9% said they handed their blank ballot paper to another person. Well, Nuria Khan is with me now. She's a journalist and host of Beyond Belief. Nuria, I think it's correct to describe, and please tell me if I'm wrong, that you describe yourself as a former Muslim. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We say ex-Muslim.
Ex-Muslim.
Colloquially, but yes.
Sure. Okay. So what do you think of this survey? Is this a shock to you? Is it surprising? Or is this just something that actually so many people who perhaps don't look at things as closely as you do need to realise, remember and be aware of?
Yeah, honestly, Peter, it's not shocking at all, to be honest. If you understand the Muslim psyche and if you understand the way Islam works as an ideology, I hammer this point home time and time again that it's not any other personal faith or relationship with God. It is more than that, and it informs everything from your, political agenda to your views on foreign policy to the causes that you align with in a very collectivist culture mentality. It's called the Muslim Ummah, or the Brotherhood, and you work towards whatever enhances your cause. So you've not really got British, whatever your local issues are, whether it's potholes or GP appointments, those aren't at the forefront of your mind. It's more about how can we save our brothers and sisters in Gaza, or how can we, support Iran.
Even if, and I mean, that's fascinating, even if your local council has no power over British foreign policy whatsoever. It's nothing to do with foreign policy. It's a lot to do with local issues, though.
Exactly. And you just, it is this kind of hope that when you get the slow infiltration of more and more Muslim MPs, for example, we've seen the breakaway of independents because they thought that Labour was not harsh enough on the Gaza conflict and was not aligning with them when they, supposedly did not criticize Israel enough in their activities. Now you've seen so many MPs break away, and you see the same thing with Mohsin Ali. If you look at his Islamic principles, they don't align with many of the principles of the Green Party theoretically when it comes to the trans side of things, but he is willing to forego that in the hope that let me get big enough in my representation and powers that we will, eventually have enough Islamists representing or Muslim MPs representing us within government
I have interviewed Mohsin Ali once. It was a short interview, and there was another interviewer there as well. And one of the things I would love to have asked him is, how do you feel about the fact your party leader, Zach Polanski, is a gay man, for example? And that's something I think he's not going to be too happy about. It is fascinating that we've seen a lot of Islamists who were, and anti-Semites, sometimes they're one and the same, who a lot of the time they're one and the same, who were part of the Labour Party. Keir Starmer did quite a lot to get rid of them, never totally get rid of them, but certainly under Jeremy Corbyn there were some shameful anti-Semites and Islamists in the Labour Party. They seem, some of them anyway, to have gone to independence, to have gone to the Green Party as well. And you have people like the former leader of the Green Party, Caroline Lucas, saying this is a major, major problem. Shahrar Ali, for example, who is a Muslim himself, actually, incidentally, is someone who is very, very concerned about Islamist entryism to the Green Party. Can we deal with this? Is this something we can actually eradicate?
I mean, honestly, it's something that needs to be nipped in the bud as soon as possible, because the more, for example, Mohsin Ali, if he gets any closer to power, you can tell the way that he shouted Allahu Akbar the second he has some victory, and he's not there on stage with Zach Polanski when Zach Polanski is seen with, the gay dancers on stage. Mohsin Ali is very openly aware enough to say there's a Green Party Mohsin Ali and then there's an Islamic Mohsin Ali, and I can separate the two for the advancement of my goals. So I think it's, now that he's going after people within his own party who are being deemed anti-Semitic, and he's, suing them for kicking them out as well, it just shows you that, there's such a nefarious Islamic agenda that he himself is adhering to within the party.
Do you think we talk about this openly, honestly, properly as a society? Because I'm hearing from the Prime Minister today talking about anti-Semitism. What I'm not hearing from him is the fact that he knows that there are many Islamists, which involve, you're talking about these Muslims who have been surveyed, a quarter of them holding a favourable view of Hamas, a terrorist organisation. He's not talking about that problem, is he?
Yeah, if you listen to whenever there's, like for example, what happened in Golders Green, whenever there's a response to it, you never hear the word Islamic or, it's always constantly just whitewashing the issue as a terror incident, but never addressing the root cause. And if you go around and listen to what's being preached in mosques on a Friday, up and down the country, it is very much things like why the Jews are the enemy and they're killing our brothers and sisters over in Gaza. And again, within the scripture of Islam, it's all about this end goal with the Jews and fighting the Jews. So you've even got British influencers who are off in Iran right now shouting death to Israel. And this mentality has perpetuated itself to the streets of London every weekend. So yeah, it is very much something that is not addressed. And every time the word Islamist comes up, they say far right just to balance it out. But the source of the root is never addressed.
Yeah, it's very interesting as well, especially when you have at least 3/4 of what the security services are doing is about Islamist terrorists in this terrorism and sympathies in this country. I wonder how much you think the Iran aspect is playing into this, because Iran, of course, there are tools of their regime, people who are serving the regime on the streets of London. We're not at war with Iran technically, but certainly they're against our way of life. There have been attacks on various people. We saw that journalist over a year ago. There have been others as well. I just wonder how big the Iran issue that has obviously come to the fore in the last 6 months or so is playing into Islamism, is playing into the sort of Islamic control of Iran versus the people who want their freedom.
Oh, I mean, it's a big problem here in the UK, in America as well, but in the UK, because we haven't banned the IRGC yet, you've got sleeper cells, ready to be activated across the UK. You've got ex-regime members who are living a life casually in North London in the leafy suburbs, and yet here they are theologically saying, yep, there's no issue with the fatwa against Salman Rushdie, and let me go and mourn the death of the Ayatollah. And this is the same mindset you see if you just look at the protests happening in London. It is despicable that these people are propping up a murderous, barbaric regime that is murdering hundreds of thousands of its own citizens, and the support for it is unrivaled in this capital.
I just have one more question for you, and this is about a story we're going to talk about a little bit later on in the programme. This is a report on abuse committed by Sarah Sharif's father, which could have saved her life. It's been kept secret because the killer's data protection rights. This is her father's extensive domestic abuse before he started attacking the 10-year-old Sarah, the little girl who was murdered. Absolutely horrendous, and she was, for example, put in a headscarf at various points to disguise her injuries. I just wonder how much cultural sensitivity, we're seeing this every day, aren't we? Cultural sensitivity and worries about people being called racist are stopping them actually intervening in cases like that.
Yeah, I hate to say it, Peter, but I do think this is an extension of that same mentality of let's not look too deep into it in case lest we be called racist or Islamophobic for questioning why.
We saw it with rape gangs as well, didn't we?
Absolutely. It's, especially if she's one day turned up in school with a hijab, we can't question it because, that would look a bit too, invasive given her faith and the sensitivities around it. But, I work in the sector preventing violence against women and girls, and we always have at the forefront of our mind that any single time you type up anything to do with safeguarding, when something like as horrific as this happens, you will hand over everything so we can see at which point the safeguarding lapsed or, there was not enough communication or the authorities weren't involved. And I think it's despicable that in this case, they're hiding behind that loophole.
Yeah, listen, thank you very much. It's always worth hearing what you say. You say so much common sense, and I really appreciate you joining me on the programme. That's Nuria Khan there, who's a journalist and host of Beyond Belief. As she says, she works in the sector of violence against women and girls as well. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, the Foreign Minister of America, giving a press conference at the moment talking about Iran's blockade. Let's hear a bit of what he's saying.
Some fast boat come up on a ship and shoot it up. We're going to respond to it, and we've been successful at it. I don't know what the exact number is, but I know a number of those fast boats have now been targeted, and will continue to be if they pose a threat to our forces. We'll shoot down drones, we'll shoot down missiles, but it's defensive in nature. This is defensive. So if you hear stories about attacks and launching of firing back and forth, it's not back and forth. We are only responding if attacked first. This is a defensive operation, and that's what's occurring here. Just about the importance of the Straits for a moment. This is approximately a quarter of the world's oil trade, along with significant volumes of fuel and fertilizer that operate through the Straits of Hormuz. The Iranian regime cannot be allowed to dictate who uses this vital waterway. I don't think this is also being reported enough. Maybe you are reporting. I don't read everyone. I don't know many damn outlets here. I don't know who you all are, but I mean, I know who some of you are, but I don't know all of you are. But I will say this about it. This is an international waterway. Okay, this is an international waterway. And international law is very clear, and I love it because everybody always talks about international law, and this international law on this is very clear. International waterways, no country can control them. There is no international law that allows you to say, I'm going to put mines in an international body of water and I'm going to blow up ships that don't listen to us and try to go through. That's what Iran is doing. This is a criminal act. And someone needs to do something about it. Something needs to be done. It's completely illegal, completely illegitimate, and completely unacceptable. And that's why the United States military is guiding stranded commercial ships safely through the strait and is working to restore freedom of navigation and putting an end to these efforts to hold the global economy hostage. So far, as a proof of concept and as a proof of function, 2 U.S. flag merchant ships have successfully transferred the Strait of Hormuz in the first stages of this project, and they're now safely on their way. The U.S. military is deploying the necessary assets to extend this defensive umbrella over commercial shipping. But there should be no mistake. And as I said this already, this is a defensive operation. I want to reiterate that point. This is important to understand. If no shots are fired at these ships and no shots are fired at us, we're not firing shots. But if we're fired on, we will respond, and we will respond with lethal efficiency. The assets supporting this project, by the way, include guided missile destroyers, over 100 land and sea-based aircraft, multi-domain unmanned platforms, and 15,000 of the finest military service members on the planet. These forces have already destroyed, as I told you earlier, I thought it was 6, it's 7 Iranian fast boats that failed to heed our warnings. And by fast boats, we're talking about, some of these things look like Boston whalers. Okay, so these are not like Navy ships. But nonetheless, they come fast at these boats, try to swarm them, try to harm them. We're not going to let that happen. So 7 of them now sit at the bottom of the sea, along with, by the way, the rest of Iran's Navy. That's where you can find their Navy today. And we're
Marco Rubio there, who is the U.S. Secretary of State, their foreign minister, giving a press conference in the White House. And he announced, we didn't see it on this station, but because we came to it a little bit late because we were speaking to our guest a minute ago, but he announced 10 civilian sailors have died due to the conflict in the Strait of Hormuz. He also says the US will continue to target drones and boats that pose a threat to the US forces. We'll be talking more about that in about 10 minutes time, actually, with Greg Swenson, who's in Washington, who is of Republicans overseas, but he's in Washington, and we'll have a chat with him in a second. But I want to take your calls first and your messages as well. We'll do that after the break, so stay with us here on Talk.
Is Starmer fueling anti-Semitism?
I don't think he's doing anything to deal with anti-Semitism. The attempt to gaslight the British people and the Jewish community is appalling.
This has to stop. It's almost being normalised, and it's terrifying, and we're sick of it. Enough's enough.
Don't be shocked, and don't you bloody dare claim to be shocked or upset or care about Jewish people being stabbed on the streets of our capital city in broad daylight. This is on you.
Cush Jumbo and Peter Capaldi!
It just so happens that it's all "you're amazing."
Right. Paul White! Sir Lenny Henry!
I was face down and the dog sniffed my crotch. It was very, very embarrassing.
Staying out for the summer.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Rubio is still being asked questions in the White House. Let's just hear another minute of this.
Always said they don't want a nuclear weapon. That's because they've always said that, they just don't mean it. And why do you say, well, how do you know they don't mean it? Well, we don't mean it because they're doing all the things, and historically have tried to do all the things that you do if you want a nuclear weapons program. For example, they innovate and try to innovate long-range delivery missiles that now, in some cases, are capable of reaching much of Europe. They build these large underground centrifuges for enrichment activity. There are countries in the world that are involved in the enrichment business, but these guys do it in mountains and in caves and in hiding. They've always had secret components of their nuclear program undisclosed to the world, and we know for a fact that they retain highly enriched uranium at 60%, that they did so, and that has no civilian use, none, zero whatsoever. So they have an opportunity here to agree to something that will make it clear that they're not interested in a nuclear. One thing is to say we don't want a nuclear weapon. Another thing is to do the things that prove you don't want a nuclear weapon. By the way, if what Iran wants is a civilian nuclear program for power plants and stuff like that, there are a lot of countries in the world that have that, and they don't enrich. They import the enriched material. You know, they could have that if that's what they wanted, but they're not acting like that's what they wanted. They're acting like they want a military, nuclear program. That's unacceptable. So that's the process we're engaged in now. To create, that's the object of this diplomacy, is to come up with some level of understanding about what are the topics that they've agreed to negotiate on. We don't have to have the actual agreement written out, and one day this is highly complex and highly technical. But we have to have a diplomatic solution that is very clear about the topics that they are willing to negotiate on and the extent and the concessions they're willing to make at the front end in order to make those talks worthwhile.
Marco Rubio there, the Secretary of State in America, talking about Iran. We'll continue to talk about this issue in a few minutes' time. We're going to be speaking to Greg Swenson live from Washington. Lots of people getting in touch about children, about ADHD and about Starmer as well. Oliver in Somerset says children being bored is vital to getting them to pick up a book and use their imagination. Tech and screens kill minds. Being bored is a good motivator. Oliver, I totally agree with that. I think there are far too many children who don't have to be creative at all or make their own entertainment, and it is not a parent's responsibility to entertain children all the time. Another person says, my 30-year-old daughter has ADHD, which I knew from the day she was born. I refused to have her labelled and described her as spirited in those days, as diagnosis was a stigma. Too many parents use it as a cash cow. We've been talking as well during this programme about Starmer, what he's been saying about anti-Semitism. Let's just have a quick look now before we go to Matt in Cheshire about what he's been saying about anti-Semitism. This is Starmer speaking at Downing Street earlier today.
It is also important to recognise that so often this hatred does not begin with violence. It begins with ideas, with misinformation, tropes and conspiracy theories, and with attitudes that, left unchecked, can take root and spread. So in those spaces where the shoots of anti-Semitism begin to grow, we are stepping in.
Matt in Cheshire is on the line. He has some thoughts on what the Prime Minister has been saying and doing. 0344 499 1000 is the number Matt has called. You can too. Matt, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi, good evening, Peter.
Hi there.
Hope you are well.
Yes, you too, Matt.
I don't think there's ever been a better example of actual gaslighting than that speech. He blames Iran and universities but fails to mention British Muslims. He conveniently forgets to mention the Labour Party, the institution probably most responsible for anti-Semitism in Britain and in universities.
You think that the Labour Party has a lot to be called into question for on all of this? Do you not think Starmer did at least something to get rid of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party?
I've got it written right in front of me, Peter. There are still dozens of MPs in the Labour Party that were loyal to Corbyn, as Starmer was. And as you know, I think Starmer's claim he ridded Labour of anti-Semitism is classic Starmer drivel. He pushed it onto the streets and into the Green Party, but they were trained and indoctrinated by Labour. It reminds me of David Amos's murder being blamed on online hate to avoid using the word Muslim. And with such incomprehensible cowardice, these issues can never be addressed.
I don't know if you saw the Green Party candidate on Question Time last week. I don't really watch the programme, to be brutally honest, but I saw the clip. And this was the Green Party candidate was asked, why do you think anti-Semitism is a major problem? Why do you think these attacks happened in Golders Green, for example? And she said, well, the cost of living is so high, and there are lots of issues to do with prices going up. And I sort of thought, what's that got to do with anything? When will they actually start tackling this? When will the left start saying, as we heard from Nuria earlier on, that Islamism in our society is a major, major issue, Matt?
Yeah, it's that dangerous sort of the complete inability to address the issue and just to avoid it and change the subject, which Starmer did, that has led to it increasing year on year. It needs to be grasped, It needs to call out aspects of the Muslim community, which we know he will never do, which we know the Greens will never do. So why is he even bother making these speeches? There's just no substance to them whatsoever and no sort of truth in any of them.
I'm dying to hear what you think about Zach Polanski. There's a very funny tweet actually from Zia Youssef, who is the Home Affairs spokesman of Reform UK. Let me see if I can find it here, actually, because it was just, I laughed out loud when I saw it, because Zach Polanski certainly has been called, his credentials have certainly been called into question when it comes to his time as a hypnotherapist. And Zia Youssef saying, hold on a second, you mean Zach Polanski was running around promising women he could grow their breasts through hypnosis without a licence? Who'd have thought?
There's a picture of Zach Polanski I've seen on YouTube where he just stood with his mouth open. He looks like a Wurzel Gummidge. And I would just use that picture as my campaign against the Greens.
Goodness me.
He literally he looks like a wino with all his teeth falling out.
Oh dear.
He just looks
dear.
like...
That's a bit personal. Let's attack his policies, Matt. But listen, says someone who hasn't got great teeth himself. Matt, thank you very, very much indeed. I'm referring to me. I'm sure Matt's pearly whites are absolutely stunning and a great suggestion to us all. Heather is in South Ayrshire and has some thoughts on Zach Polanski. Heather, what would you like to say this evening?
I would like to say this, if you let me have a word in Edgeworth, please, Peter. And I'm going to say this. Well, now I've been having a talk with James with this about now the Greens are starting to lose points. 15 points in the polls, am I right?
I think it's Zach Polanski's particular... the view on him himself has gone down 14 points. So I don't think it's this Green Party per se. I think it's just his leadership. But certainly they're under pressure, Heather.
Yeah, because, this is the reason why the Liberal Democrats are keeping their powder dry and not saying much, because we haven't heard what the Liberal Democrats is doing, and we're not hearing from Ed Davey at the moment. They're keeping their powder dry because I say in time will come the Liberal Democrats will start to gain points again, and
it'll be very interesting.
The rise.
Yeah, I think you're right, Heather, and it'll be very interesting to see what happens on Thursday. We are actually speaking to a Liberal Democrat MP in a few minutes' time. It's not really about their electoral issues, it's more to do with the council whose blunders led to Sarah Sharif's death, refusing to release a report to protect the killer's rights, her father, Irfan Sharif, who was jailed for life. We'll talk more about that as time goes on. We're also going to get reaction to Rubio as well. He's still on his feet, actually. Let's hear just a little bit more of this. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, the Foreign Minister of America, still at this press conference in the White House.
Against some of these things that are happening to them. And I would view that as distinct and separate from the specifics of this operation that was ongoing before it concluded, and certainly different from the operation that's going on now. Right there in the
regarding Colombia, Mr. Secretary.
Right behind you, not Colombia, right there. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Secretary, thank you so much. On Lebanon, are we in a ceasefire or less fire? And the second question, do you think you would be able to achieve an agreement between Lebanon and Israel without risking a civil war in Lebanon? What are you doing to risk? What are you doing to?
No, I got it. I got the gist of your question. So look, here's the challenge with Lebanon. Okay. There's no problem between the Lebanese government and the Israeli government. Israel doesn't claim any land in Lebanon belongs to them. And by and large, I think a peace deal between Lebanon and Israel is imminently achievable and should be. The problem with Israel and Lebanon is not Israel or Lebanon, it's Hezbollah. Hezbollah operates from inside of Lebanese territory. They terrorize and attack Israelis, but they also are inflicting tremendous damage on the Lebanese people. The reason why Lebanon gets attacked by Israel is because of Hezbollah. Because Hezbollah is hiding in some house, launching rockets against Israelis, and then they get hit. So what you're seeing now is Israeli responses to either attacks or perceived threats. And this is not new. This has been going on for a very long time. What is our hope? Our hope is to engage the Lebanese and Israeli governments under our mediation at the table to achieve this. And that is having Lebanese armed forces and a Lebanese government, not just with a willingness, but with the capability to begin to challenge Hezbollah and disarm them. Because the Lebanese people are also victims of Hezbollah. And by the way, on the topic of Hezbollah in Lebanon, who is behind Hezbollah? Why do they exist? They're an agent of Iran. If you go through that Middle East and you identify every problem, Hamas, Hezbollah, to some extent the Houthis, obviously, and others, behind every one of these groups is Tehran. So apart from the nuclear weapons, apart from all these other things, these guys are behind all the bad actors. Hezbollah is a wing. It's an extension of Iranian desire to destabilize the region. So we're very committed to this process. It's not going to be easy. You're asking me a complex question. You know this has been going on for a very long time. It's not going to be easy. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that both sides continue to talk so that progress can be made on some sort of permanent ceasefire that isn't constantly spoiled by Hezbollah and by Hezbollah violence.
Right now, speaking in the White House there. We'll get some analysis of what he's saying in just a few minutes. But just before we go to a break, actually, we talked about Rachel Millward, the deputy leader of the Green Party. I think they have more than one deputy leader, and what she said on Question Time last week. She was asked where she thinks anti-Semitism and the motivations for that horrendous attack that happened in Golders Green actually came from. Just listen to her answer. This was Question Time last Thursday on the BBC.
Lady from the Green Party, you just stated that you've seen racial hatred in the country. Could you please specify where that hatred is coming from?
Not quite sure what you mean. Do you mean from the general public? Or?
Well, she said there's racial hatred in the country, and I'd just like to know where she thinks it's coming from.
I mean, I was talking about the fact that there is a rise in racially motivated crime, that kind of thing. There's more and more hate crimes. There's more reports of people feeling uncomfortable, unsafe.
Yeah.
There's more division.
You said there's racial hatred. Where do you think it's coming from?
OK. What are you getting at exactly?
Well, where does she think this racial hatred is coming from?
What do you mean? What specific sectors of the community?
I can actually say that where I think it's coming from, actually, is that we live in rip-off Britain and people are having a really, really tough time. They're struggling because their bills are going up. They're struggling because they can't afford their rents. I actually think this is the reality. They're struggling because food is now so expensive, it's eye-watering. What that means is that there's then a tendency to find someone to blame. And I think that there have been narratives Zia's party is definitely one of these narratives, like the people propagating these narratives, that will point the finger at certain communities to blame them when it is not the fault of those communities. So I actually think that the economic situation, which is disastrous at the moment, is a big reason why hate's on the rise. So that's why we need to solve the economic problems. We need to end rip-off Britain, make sure ordinary people are having a better life day to day, not struggling so much. But we also need to really focus on community cohesion and living well together.
Okay, let me...
But you're not prepared to pinpoint where it's coming from. There we go. Thank you.
And we just have on the screen there, just for a few seconds there, the brilliant face of Victoria Atkins, who's the Shadow Environment Secretary, just looking utterly confused, as I think we all were. So really straightforward question, of course. Fiona Bruce says, what are you getting at? Well, he said, where does racial hatred come from? Really straightforward. Where does racial hatred come from? Where do these attacks come from? What are the motivating factors? And the Deputy Leader of the Green Party, Rachel Millward, says, well, it's rip-off Britain. It's economics. Is it? I mean, Victoria Atkins on the screen there, again, the Shadow Environment Secretary for the Conservatives, just looking utterly baffled, as I was when I saw it as well. Je suis Vicky Atkins is all I have to say. Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Let's hear a little bit more from Marco Rubio. He's in the White House at the moment giving this press conference about what's going on in Iran. We will then hear from Greg Swenson, who's in Washington. Let's hear from Marco Rubio.
And that's one of the many reasons, apart from like the massive loss of life in a nuclear strike, why Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. I mean, so this is an example of, if they had a nuclear weapon, they closed the straits and they would tell the world, what are you going to do about it? We have a nuclear weapon, we can attack you with it. That's the world none of us want to leave behind. It won't happen under this president's watch, but some future president and future, and the future Americans will have to deal with this. So just one more example of why these guys can never be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. Right?
Marco Rubio there speaking live in the White House. Well, President Trump talked about similar issues a little bit earlier today. Let's see what he's been saying also in the White House.
The Middle East would have been blown up. There wouldn't be a Middle East anymore. They would have controlled, they would have taken over the Middle East. Now they're trying to survive, and they won't be successful unless they make a deal. Oh, if they don't make a deal, they won't be successful. It'll go very quickly and methodically. Believe me, it'll be very easy. But we have so many alternatives. It's amazing. And nobody knew this, because as an example, Japan got 90% of their oil, most of their energy, but most of their oil from the Hormuz Strait. South Korea got 43% of it. By the way, their ship was shot at. They were not in the cavalcade of ships. They decided to go it alone, and their ship got the hell knocked out of it yesterday. But they didn't shoot the ships that were guarded by us, I'll tell you that. We knocked down a lot of missiles.
Donald Trump speaking in the White House. Rubio is still speaking at that press conference. If he says anything dramatic or that changes the narrative, of course, we will bring it to you. But I want to speak to Greg Swenson now. He is the head of Republicans overseas. He's actually in Washington at the moment. Greg, really interesting to talk to you. And clearly, there are many, many movements in regard to what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz with Iran. Things, the tentative ceasefire seems to be breaking down to some degree. What's your reading of the situation?
Yeah, I would agree that the ceasefire is breaking down. I mean, it was fragile anyway, but I think with Iran firing on commercial ships and then also firing missiles and drones into the UAE, you know, that's sort of, I don't know how else you would define the end of a ceasefire. Now, the U.S. has sunk 6 of their small speedboats. And so, you know, it seems to me like this is only going to end one way. I don't think diplomacy is working here. I know the president will continue to try. I know Secretary of State Rubio is trying. But, you know, the lunatics that are still running Iran, I don't think are going to cave on any of the big issues. So I think hostilities will resume. At the very least, the U.S. will open the straits, and that's really what's happening here. Is you know, we're at the beginning of that process, and it might be tedious, but you know, we're moving ships through the strait. We need to move a lot more, obviously. But and you know, we've done some demining, and so I think it's inevitable that the U.S. and if we're fired upon, obviously we will respond, and the president's been pretty clear about that.
Yes, he certainly has, as has Marco Rubio. It's really interesting. He's speaking just at this exact moment in the White House, and we will, of course, keep an eye across that. What is the political appetite where you are in Washington for this conflict to continue? We were told by President Trump it would be over quickly. It hasn't been. It's been, you know, we're in, what, month 3 now?
Yeah, I mean, it's all how you define quickly, and I think they might have made some mistakes by saying, you know, weeks, not months. I can't recall who said that. But
I think it was Trump himself who said 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah.
And look, I think, you know, he tends to exaggerate or use hyperbole, but we also couldn't predict everything that would happen. And you know, I would think after the overwhelming success that we had in eliminating the Navy, in all the bombing of strategic and tactical interests in Iran, you would think a normal country would either surrender or get to the negotiating table, but they really haven't. They haven't done any credible negotiating anyway. So now we're not in negotiations anymore. I think it's more like surrender management. You know, I mean, as the president said, or maybe it was Pete Hegseth this morning, you know, we're locked and loaded. And so if they pull the trigger or send any more speedboats, I mean, of course we'll eliminate the speedboats. I would hope that the captains and the crew have seen the videos from the Venezuelan narco boats. But you know, if they're suicidal, I'm sure they'll be happy to sail a kamikaze speedboat toward a U.S. asset, and they will be eliminated. But
do you really think they see it as surrender management, or is it more a case of doubling down? I mean, many people within the Iranian regime we're hearing anyway, it's hard to know, seem to be much stronger and more hardline even than those they replaced because they were eliminated by the Americans and the Israelis.
Yeah, I mean, the rhetoric is almost comical. You know, when you hear the bluster from the regime or from the IRGC that says, you know, we're going to attack the aggressors and all these things, you know, which are meaningless because they don't have the capability to do that. So that's just, you know, banter, really. But to answer your first question, Peter, I don't think there's much of an appetite in the sense that the president is not polling well on this issue and support of the war is going down. And that's obviously correlated to prices of specifically to gasoline. But I think you'll see, you know, some other hardships on, you know, ahead. And I think it's, even though it's a lot better here than it is in the rest of the world in terms of, you know, petrol prices, but that's still an issue and it's not polling well. So, but I'm not sure that the appetite for it really matters. You know, it's probably polling in the 30s, you know, low to mid. That doesn't sound great, but the president hasn't flipped on this. He didn't use the ceasefire to wiggle out of this war. He intends on winning. And as you heard the Secretary of State say, you know, we're not going to back away and have a nuclear weapon capability with the regime. So in spite of the political capital that it's costing him, he's going to conduct this war. And he's doing it by the blockade. He's doing it with economic fury. I mean, 40% of Iran's GDP has been lost. The currency is down at another new low. It was down 15% just in 2 days earlier this week or late last week. And so, this is not a regime that has the capabilities to win. So we will win this, and it's just a matter of and I appreciate that the president knows that it's probably costing him, but when this thing is over, I think he'll get a political tailwind for it.
What about international allies? We saw the King's visit, of course, to Washington and New York in recent days. Keir Starmer's relationship with Trump doesn't seem to be necessarily getting any better, but perhaps a slightly warmer view towards Britain and to the United Kingdom because of the King Charles's trip.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that you'll see that I think if the Prime Minister was smart, he'd send a few minesweepers or something to support the process. It doesn't mean you have to send carriers or destroyers, but I think that we are definitely doing well with allies in the region, and I expect to see, maybe it's Japan, maybe it's South Korea, someone come on board with some minesweepers. We don't really need them, but I think in a tedious process like that, where you have to, and we've already demined a lot. We've got a nice path along the Omani coast, on the southern part of the strait. That's been cleared, but I think covering a lot of ground, it might be useful to have some support from our allies, with some minesweepers, traditional minesweepers. But, we have the greatest technology in the military, so it's just a matter of time before the regime has nothing left. We'll kill all the speedboats, we'll demine the strait and the Gulf, and this thing will be, in the rearview mirror. But I can't tell you whether it's going to be 2 weeks or 2 months.
Certainly. Greg, listen, thank you for that. That's Greg Swenson there. He's the head of Republicans overseas, speaking to us from Washington. Let's hear just a little bit more about what Rubio is saying. Marco Rubio, the foreign minister of the United States, the Secretary of State is the title he has. He's giving a press conference in the press briefing room of the White House at the moment.
Potential U.S. actions like supplying those weapons? Well,
I think it goes back to the question I was asked a moment ago. I think the president thinks it's heartbreaking that the Iranian people are abused by this regime the way they are. In the end, I mean, this regime is not... Guys, I know I've said this. I think I said this in my hearing before the Senate when I got confirmed. I don't know of any country in the world where there's a bigger difference between the people and the people who run the country. Okay, this country is run by radical Shia clerics. And that's not what Iran and the Iranian people are. Now, they may be Shia, but they're not radicals and they're not clerics, and they just want a normal life and a regular life, and in many ways a very cosmopolitan country with an incredible history and incredible legacy and the like. So there's this huge divide between the people of Iran, whom we sympathize with, and who the president sympathizes with, because they're the ones suffering. Look, the world is a victim of Iran, okay? The world is a victim of Iran because they're terrorists, because of what they're doing now in the Straits. But the people of Iran are daily victims of the regime, and the president has deep sympathy for what they're going through. And I think he's just expressing that sympathy and that frustration that they don't have the ability to do more to get rid of this regime that has crushed this country and isolated it from the world, which is a country that shouldn't be isolated from the world because its people are phenomenal. All right. I wish I had like a dice. Go ahead. Yeah. No, right there, because I'm going to Italy. Voy a Italia. Déjame hablar con el señor. Okay. He's Italian. I know him. He used to cover Capitol Hill. You're Italian, right?
For many years.
For many years.
Yeah,
okay.
Daniele Compatangelo, thank you, Mr. Secretary. So I have two short questions for you.
Oh, damn, two questions.
First, as you...
I think we're probably all right with the Italian media's questions, but Rubio, of course, speaks Italian. He is a very talented man in many ways. Another person being in touch on Iran, saying, I think many are also missing the rather important point that holding up international shipping lanes is also a huge warning to your friends in the East, i.e. do not try this. I say this as the admin had already gauged that Lloyd's of London would cut insurance, hinting they don't like this policy, and the US stepped in to cover it. I think changing an old global system is wrapped up in this too, as this has never happened. Was this a dual mission with a blockade as a key strategic point? It also shifts oil purchasing globally. So many questions. Well, thank you for that. I just want to go slightly back before I read Alex and Cardiff's message. I just want to play the clip again, and if you are watching, or if you can watch, sling on your YouTube or your connected device, maybe your smart TV, just to see the face of the Shadow Environment Secretary, Victoria Atkins, when a very normal, straightforward, reasonable question is asked on Question Time last week of the Greens deputy leader. about where she thinks hatred towards Jews is coming from and where. And I mean, just look at the clip. And we've done a little freeze frame of Victoria Atkins at the end, and I think her facial expression betrays what we were all thinking when we watched this.
Lady from the Green Party, you just stated that you've seen racial hatred in the country. Could you please specify where that hatred is coming from?
Not quite sure what you mean. Do you mean from the general public, or?
Well, she said there's racial hatred in the country, and I'd just like to know where she thinks it's coming from.
I mean, I was talking about the fact that there is a rise in racially motivated crime, that kind of thing. There's more and more hate crimes. There's more reports of people feeling uncomfortable, unsafe.
Yeah.
There's more division.
You said there's racial hatred. Where do you think it's coming from?
Okay. What are you getting at exactly?
Well, where does she think this racial hatred is coming from?
What do you mean? What specific sectors of the community?
I can actually say that where I think it's coming from, actually, is that we live in rip-off Britain and people are having a really, really tough time. They're struggling because their bills are going up. They're struggling because they can't afford their rents. I actually think this is the reality. They're struggling because food is now so expensive, it's eye-watering. What that means is that there's then a tendency to find someone to blame. And I think that there have been narratives. Zia's party is definitely one of these narratives, like the people propagating these narratives, that will point the finger at certain communities to blame them when it is not the fault of those communities. So I actually think that the economic situation, which is disastrous at the moment, is a big reason why hate's on the rise. So that's why we need to solve the economic problems. We need to end rip-off Britain, make sure ordinary people are having a better life day to day, not struggling so much. But we also need to really focus on community cohesion and living well together.
Okay, let me...
But you're not prepared to pinpoint where it's coming from. There you go. Thank you.
We just held the face of Victoria Atkins there at the end, who I think speaks for all of us in her questioning of what on earth the Deputy Leader of the Green Party was about. Yes, rip off Britain, that is fueling racial hatred. Rachel Millward, the Deputy Leader of the Green Party, talking absolute nonsense. And Victoria Atkins, I think, speaking or at least expressing for all of us, je suis Victoria Atkins is all I can say. Zia Youssef also looked pretty sceptical there too. Alex in Cardiff has been in touch and says the answer is Islamism. Is it that hard? I mean, honestly, it was disgusting. The Green person looking to Fiona Bruce for help, but rather than answer, the left will not call out racism if it's anti-Semitic. Shame on them. Ashton Hastings saying, look at Zia Youssef's face when the Green woman was talking. He couldn't keep a straight face. Well, lots of reaction to that. Let us know what you think as well. We'll go to the calls. We'll go to the phones in just a second. Mary in Cumbria and Ali in Sweden are holding, and we will speak to them in just a second. Stay with us here on Talk.
Is Starmer fueling anti-Semitism?
I don't think he's doing anything to deal with anti-Semitism. The attempt
to gaslight the British people and the Jewish community is appalling.
This has to stop. It's almost being normalised, and it's terrifying, and we're sick of it. Enough's enough.
Don't be shocked, and don't you bloody dare claim to be shocked or upset or care about Jewish people being stabbed on the streets of our capital city in broad daylight. This is on you.
Jumbo and Peter Cardwell.
It just so happens that it's all you're amazing.
Right. Paul White! Sir Lenny Henry!
I was face down and the dog sniffed my crotch. It was very, very embarrassing.
Staying out for the summer.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Michelle says she assumed where the hit was coming from, as she knows fully well. Thanks for all the messages that are coming in this evening. You can send me a WhatsApp text message. You can on 0344 499 1000 just WhatsApp me and it comes through on the screen, and we'll read out what you say, as many messages as we can between now and 10. But let's go to the phones. You can ring me on the same number as well. Mary in Cumbria has been very patient. Sorry to keep you waiting, Mary. Mary, what would you like to say this evening?
So before I say what I actually rang in about, it is written in the Quran that all Jews and Christians are the lowest of all animals and must be killed. So every Muslim is aware of that. But what I really did ring in to say was that we in Cumbria, Northern Cumbria, aren't having any elections, local elections.
Yeah, they're not in every area of England, are they? So in Cumbria, you aren't having elections. Do you wish there were elections there?
Yeah, certainly. Yes. The other thing was that Cumbria, it wasn't widely published or anything or known, but Cumbria, the Labour Council has now applied for and made Northern Cumbria an area of sanctuary.
Right.
Locals did go to an open meeting at the to object, and their main objection was, look what's happened to other places.
And you're not too happy about that, Mary?
Yeah. Well, they weren't. It was an open meeting, yet they weren't allowed to speak.
Goodness me. Well, listen, thanks for your call, Mary, and thanks for bringing us your experience of that. Ali is in Stockholm in Sweden and wants to talk about ADHD. I know this is something a lot of people have contacted us about this evening. Ali, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Actually, Peter, it's not about ADHD.
Oh.
It's I'm being deported from Sweden.
Oh, okay.
On the 22nd, and I got 2 weeks' notice.
Where are you from originally, Ali? Where are you being deported to?
I'm from Aberdeen in Scotland.
Okay.
I've been in Sweden for 11 years. I sold my home and everything in Aberdeen.
Mm-hmm.
I came over to Sweden because my partner was Swedish. We set up a company. I have a small place here. And because we're not married, the Swedes are really hitting down. And I've been told that I can only take one suitcase on a plane next week. And all my stuff is here.
How much notice have you been given?
2.5 weeks.
Goodness me. And why is this happening? Is this a policy that they have? Is it something to do with...
I think, well, my partner's Swedish, and I've been told that it's something in Sweden. They have a thing about the Brits because of Brexit, that they're taking... There's lots of friends I have here. Like, I have a family... there's a family down the road. The husband's a doctor and his wife's Swedish, and they have 2 kids, and he's been sent back to the UK.
Right.
So it's really difficult. But my question is, Keir Starmer is so into human rights, and he's so close to the EU, but he doesn't care about British people in the EU. Where is Starmer when you need him?
Well, that's a very good point, Ali. And listen, I wish you well with what you're facing at the moment. That is clearly very, very difficult on ADHD itself, actually. Sarah has been in touch. She was a teacher and she has talked about her experiences in dealing with it. Let's hear what Sarah said in a voice note.
These young people were being labelled at such a young age and put in a box and basically told that they couldn't do anything. And I had one young girl in particular who would say to me, I can't do that because of my ADHD. And she hadn't even tried. And I bumped into her last year and she's not working. She now has a child who's 4 years old who is currently also going through diagnosis. They are perfectly capable human beings who just need to be supported and motivated in the right way. And I just feel had they not been diagnosed at such a young age, maybe their lives would have turned out differently. Who knows?
Very, very interesting to hear your experience there, and thank you very much on that, Sarah, for bringing that in and giving us your personal experience. Always interesting to hear. Some breaking news that Rachel Millward, who is the Green Deputy Leader we just heard from in that question time clip, who was bizarrely saying that the cost of living has fueled racial hatred, apparently the Telegraph newspaper reporting that she shared a conspiracy theory over the Golders Green attack. I'll bring you the latest on that as soon as I have the copy in my hand, which is no doubt being printed as we speak, and we'll talk as well to a Lib Dem MP about the horrendous nature of the council whose blunders led to Sarah Sharif's death, refusing to release a report to protect the killer's rights. Stay with us.
At 11:16 this morning, two men, aged 76 and 34, were attacked on Highfield Avenue in Barnet. They suffered stab wounds in the attack and are now being looked after in hospital.
We need to make sure that when people carry out these activities, they feel the full force of the law. People think they can get away with this. The person who firebombed a few weeks ago is out on bail. That's not full force of the law.
This crisis, it's a crisis for all of us. It's not enough to simply say we stand with Jewish communities. Of course we do, but we must show it and act it. And the responsibility lies with each and every one of us, because it is our fight too.
Let's stop importing people from countries where anti-Semitism is the norm. And if our London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, in his infinite wisdom and belief in diversity, thinks that's the sort of diverse view that it's okay to have on the streets of London and the police don't get involved, don't be shocked, and don't you bloody dare claim to be shocked or upset or care about Jewish people being stabbed on the streets of our capital city in broad daylight. This is on you.
You keep getting proven right every single time. Jews are not safe in this country.
Well, absolutely. No one can be surprised or feeling shocked that this happened. No Jew certainly is. I mean, we had Zach Polanski last week saying this was just a perceived threat. Well, we can see this isn't any perception. This is real. This is happening on the streets. This isn't just an anti-Semitic terror attack. This is an attack on Britain, on the Western liberal democracy and values.
The first politician that uses the word shocking, I might just go and throttle him, because this is anything but shocking. It's the most expected thing is almost overdue, if you ask me, because, I mean, I just left Israel last week. I thought it would be the last time we were woken up by explosions, but clearly not.
The Jewish community is our community, and their safety is our safety, and we have to make it absolutely.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good evening. It's just gone 9 o'clock. I'm Peter Cardwell. This is Talk. Thank you so much for your company. We're hearing that Rachel Millward, who is the Deputy Leader of the Green Party, has apparently been sharing conspiracy theories over the Golders Green attack. The Telegraph is reporting that. We'll talk about that in just a second. Also, a very interesting report in the Daily Mail about a council whose blunders led to Sarah Sharif's death, refusing to release a report to protect her killer's rights. There's an MP who's been doing excellent excellent work on this. We'll talk to him in a second. We'll also talk this hour about woke academics and what can be done about them, as well as whatever else you want to talk about. Iran, anti-Semitism, postal votes. There are so many different things that people are contacting us about. And if you want to get in touch, 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell, send me a voice note like Sarah did, send me a WhatsApp text message, or give me a ring. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call, or indeed to send your messages in on. So much to discuss between now and 10 o'clock. Stay with us here on Talk. So we saw that clip of Rachel Millward, the Deputy Leader of the Green Party, a minute ago. We were talking about that. Now it's reported by the Telegraph this evening that she shared a conspiracy theory about the Golders Green attack in which 2 Jewish men were stabbed. She shared a post on Twitter which claimed a third victim on the day, who was Muslim, had been erased from the news stories to, as it was put in the tweet, suit a weaponised, desperate narrative. And it's emerged that Muslim Greens, a group of party activists, chatted on a private WhatsApp group over the weekend about launching a campaign to highlight the alleged failure to report that Ismail Hussein, the third victim of the stabbings, was there. There's no suggestion that this idea has the backing of Mr. Hussein at all. And I mean, this is just really, really shocking. This is Ms. Millward sharing a post from the News Court account that claimed Mr. Hussein had been erased from headlines to suit a weaponised, desperate narrative. How can this be? She commented 3 attempted murders and only 2 reported. So there's some accusation there, and no doubt she will be under further pressure. We'll keep you updated with all of that. But I want to talk about something which is an exclusive report in the Daily Mail. This is a council, Surrey County Council, whose blunders led to the deaths of a beautiful little girl, Sarah Sharif. She was just 10 years old. She was, I'm not going to go into the detail of what happened to her, because even though it's 9:05 at night, it turns my stomach to think about what happened to her. Her father was an evil, abusive, psychopathic, horrendous person who is now rightly jailed for life. But there was a report on abuse committed by her father which could have saved her life, but it has been kept secret because of, guess what? His rights, the killer's rights, data protection rights. This is a damning review in November showed that social workers had evidence of his extensive domestic abuse before he started attacking 10-year-old Sarah, his daughter, but it was lost within the system. Surrey County Council is now trying to prevent its publication over fears that it could breach Irfan Sharif's rights. He should have absolutely no rights whatsoever as far as I'm concerned. Sharif was ordered to go on domestic violence perpetrator programme in 2016 after Sarah's mother accused him of hitting her and her children. He admitted to extensive and wide-ranging domestic abuse, but only attended 8 of the 26 sessions, and experts said there was not enough evidence that he had changed his behaviour. The report made shocking reading. A social worker failed, though, to complete an analysis, and it was not added to Sarah's safeguarding report. As a result, a judge decided to hand Sarah to the care of her abusive father without appreciating the risk posed by a man who had a 16-year history of attacking women and children, and he was given the care of Sarah Sharif. Within a short time, the 44-year-old Irfan Sharif began to torture his daughter in acts of brutality described by a judge as the worst crimes he had ever encountered. I'm not going to outline what they are because they're sickening and horrific and horrible. Now, I am perhaps not the Liberal Democrats' greatest fans. You probably know that. But there is an excellent Liberal Democrat MP called Will Foster who's spoken to me before. He's the Liberal Democrat MP for Woking. And Will, I just want to say you've done excellent campaigning work on this. And I know there's a lot more to do. How on earth have we arrived in this situation, and what should happen to Surrey County Council right now?
Thank you, Peter. So one of my constituents, 10-year-old, as you said, beautiful Zara, was abused, tortured and murdered by her father. That is horrific in itself. But my local authority, Surrey County Council, had so many opportunities to save her life, but they didn't take them. Before she was even born, the social workers wanted to take her into custody, away from her father, who was going to go on to murder her. But they changed their mind in the family court process. The day before she was murdered, social workers visited her house, but they went to the wrong house. It's a catalogue of mistakes, incompetency that has cost the life of a young constituent. Surrey County Council seemed to prioritise the data protection issues of Irfan rather than the protection of a vulnerable constituent. I think Surrey County Council's children's services need to be taken into special measures. I have no confidence that they've learnt the lessons from what happened to Zara Sharif. I sadly hear safeguarding stories since then that shows that there are safeguarding issues in Woking and across Surrey, and the County Council isn't in a fit state to protect vulnerable children.
Because we're always told lessons will be learned, but you're saying that they haven't been from this, even though this happened a number of years ago. There are still many safeguarding concerns still reaching your door and that you're hearing about, Will.
I don't have confidence in Surrey County Council's children's services. I do think they need to be in special measures. We can't let this happen again. And I've heard this, I'm sure you have, Peter, so many times before, where the authorities say they've learned lessons. I'm not convinced we have. I've had cases where the County Council is trying to introduce a previously abusive father back into a family setting to see if it's safe for the children to see the father
like an
again.
experiment. Let's see if he beats up the kids. I mean, it is just absolutely awful.
Is appalling, and that is one case. There are others as well. I think it's a really appalling culture in Surrey County Council. I'm hopeful that the government will put them into special measures. If they don't, we do have elections in 2 days' time for West Surrey and East Surrey Council. It's so vital that that appalling culture at the County Council doesn't transfer to our new local authorities. We need local authorities that put vulnerable people, particularly children, first.
The council spokesman has told us this request relates to the personal data of a living person. Data protection legislation determines what can and cannot be shared about a person's data, and as a public authority, Surrey County Council must observe all data protection principles when processing personal data. The council leader added, an independent safeguarding review was published last year. We are deeply sorry for the findings that related to us as a local authority. We take the findings with utmost seriousness. What do you make of those two statements?
I think it's very much a computer says no approach, that our process has been followed. Where's the empathy there? Where's the actions? Surrey County Council needs to fully implement the safeguarding report. I'm really concerned that locally and nationally we don't share enough information, enough data to protect vulnerable children, but other people as well. Surrey County Council employed Irfan Sharif, the father, as a taxi driver.
Well, this is another aspect of this. It is absolutely shocking. Tell us about this.
So he was a qualified taxi driver. He went through the relevant checks. That he worked as a county council taxi driver for the Special Educational Needs Home to School Transport Department, which is completely different to the Children's Services Department. Children's Services didn't tell special educational needs. Taxi licences are given out by a different public authority in my area, Woking Borough Council, and Surrey Police had concerns about his domestic abuse history. The lack of data.
So hold on, Will. Sorry to interrupt you here, but we had someone who was on record, had been convicted of domestic abuse of his wife and his children, someone who was on a course to try and get him out of that, which he didn't attend, who was then given a taxi licence by Surrey County Council to pick up and bring vulnerable children with special educational needs, some children who may not have been able to communicate had there been abuse towards them, and the council gave him the licence to be a taxi driver to do that. I mean, this just defies belief. It is mistake, error, incompetence against mistake, error, incompetence over and over again, Will.
And the fact that years have gone by since he was a taxi driver. We don't know what contracts he had because they don't keep those records. The lack of data sharing is a real issue. Now, recently Parliament agreed the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill, which makes notable progress in sharing data, and I think that will improve safeguarding. But we as a country need to go much further to protect vulnerable children, and I'm really concerned that we have a particular issue in my county with an appallingly run county council.
How much do you think cultural issues came into this, honestly?
So the cultural issue I talk about is the lack of public service, the lack of preventative action by the county council. The safeguarding report did highlight other cultural issues where social services weren't sufficiently quizzical about the family's ethnic background. They should have asked questions. Irfan was an evil man, and he used every loophole to hide the abuse for as long as he could, and to exploit the system. He
even used his faith to do that, didn't he? He dressed up his child in a hijab, in a headscarf that she wouldn't usually have worn for another 2 or 3 years, even if she'd been a great adherent to the Muslim faith, to cover the abuse that he had done there. I mean, he was a calculating, intelligent, evil man.
Yes, and he tried to hide the appalling injuries he was inflicting on Zara with a headscarf. When the school raised concerns, he pulled her out of school to say he was home educating her. He used all these loopholes. Now, I don't think if someone is under child protection investigation, the parent should have the right to homeschool, because the parents, like Irfan, were trying to hide their abuse that way. He used so many loopholes that we need to close to protect children in future, to ensure that Zara is the last child that is murdered by people that should have loved her and cared for her.
Will, I want you to do me a favour. Will you do me a quick favour?
Yes, sure.
Keep doing exactly what you're doing. Don't shut up about this. Just keep banging the drum. Keep going with this, not just for the sake of Sarah, but for other children who are right across the country who are dealing with monsters like this. I absolutely salute it, and I thank you for your time this evening.
Very much.
That's Will Foster there, who's a Liberal Democrat MP for Woking. Absolutely appalling what is happening there. And, we talk about MPs who are not great. There are many of them who we criticise a lot. Will is someone who is flying the flag for this, who is not shutting up about this, who is campaigning on this issue, who is making sure it's in the media, and I will continue to talk to him about safeguarding our kids, because whoever is perpetrating this horrendous abuse, the kind of abuse that I'm not even going to tell you about, I'm not going to even give you the detail of what happened to that little girl, because it is so horrific, and I actually don't even want to think about it. And we need people who are brave, who say, we can't just have these people worrying about being called racist, worrying about not, telling different parts of the system different things for data protection reasons. The law is an ass in this regard, and Surrey County Council need to do the right thing and damn the consequences. If they get sued, so be it. This monster doesn't deserve a penny of their money. Thank you to Andrew and Margate, who's been in touch. He says, I've just heard from the Lib Dem MP that the murderer wasn't DBS checked to go to the taxi service for disability checks. That is just shocking. The problem was he was checked to some degree, but the right parts of the system weren't talking to other parts of the system, and I'm sure he lied to that, to those checks as well, Andrew. It is absolutely horrendous. There is Becca's been in touch as well about what Rachel Millward has been saying and retweeting. She said, how is it conspiracy? A lot of people have raised the issue that there are 3 victims. We have wall-to-wall coverage of the terrorist attack on Jews. The other bloke was a Muslim. So why is it classed as terrorism so quickly? We still need to be able to discuss this without being called anti-Semitic, says Becca. Well, I think if you go to Golders Green to stab 2 people, if that is indeed what happened, and I'm not denying that it happened, but I'm totally aware of the fact that a suspect has been charged and it is alleged at the moment, I think you can very, very safely say that that is anti-Semitic. Lots more to discuss. We'll talk more in just a second about anti-Semitism in this country. Heidi Backram, who is another indefatigable campaigner, joins us in a second. 0344 499 1000. If you have views on this, be sure to send them through, and we'll make sure that we talk about them very soon. Stay with us here on Talk.
Starmer fueling anti-Semitism?
I don't think he's doing anything to deal with anti-Semitism. The attempt to gaslight the British people and the Jewish community is appalling.
This has to stop. It's almost being normalised, and it's terrifying, and we're sick of it. Enough's enough.
Don't be shocked, and don't you bloody dare claim to be shocked or upset or care about Jewish people being stabbed on the streets of our capital city in broad daylight. This is on you.
Kush Jumbo and Peter Cardwell.
It just so happens that it's all you're amazing.
Right. Paul White! Sir Lenny Henry!
I was face down and the dog sniffed my crotch. It was very, very embarrassing.
Staying out for the summer.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks so much to everybody who's been in touch, including Tad, who has sent me a message to say, Peter, the phrase special measures is very nebulous and ambiguous. Is it one size fits all, and might we mere mortals learn in simple terms what it actually means so we can make up our own minds about these useless authorities? That's a good idea, Tad, and I do think we need to perhaps look into that a bit more, actually. What do special measures actually mean? Maybe we can get somebody on to talk about that in the next day or two. Ray says, Peter, you're listening to Naria, made me feel, make the feeling you always give about the good side of Muslims come into focus. The quiet, moderate ones will not be on yours or my side when the proverbial hits the fan, as it inevitably will. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. Nigel says Starmer is an empty shell. Mark says at no time should any person or family be better off in benefits than hard-working people and families. It's not just the cash they get, it's the council tax and utilities reductions, rent and housing benefits, even cheap tourist attractions. Why would anyone work for nothing? And another person, Michael, has been in touch about this question time clip we've been looking at. Rachel Millward. The worst thing about Rachel Millward was the cover given to her by Fiona Bruce, who should be ashamed of herself, says Michael. And I'll come back to that in just a second, actually, because one person says, my neighbour has a child with ADHD, then qualified for a mobility car, then demanded and received taxis for school runs, says Leslie. Peter says, it's easy to label people in this country, but we need the truth. The welfare huge bill includes our state pension too, and it's wrong to class our pension as a benefit because it isn't. And how much of that benefit bill goes to immigrants who shouldn't even be here, not forgetting the universal credit claimed by hard-working families who can't make ends meet on low wages. On anti-Semitism, a big story today, especially what happened in Downing Street. We're going to talk about that in a second. One person says, surely to eradicate anti-Semitism, you would have to ban the Quran. Well, I don't want to ban religious texts. I don't want to ban books in general if we can avoid it. Matthew's been in touch and says, we see anti-Semitism in every march. There are some despicable human beings on them. They just want to see Jews dead. They don't care about Sudan or other conflicts where genocide is actually happening. Only the conflict where they can wipe Israel and Jews off the face of the planet is really worrying times. Well, one person who helps me make sense of those really worrying times is Heidi Backram, the writer and campaigner against anti-Semitism. We'll come to Heidi in just a second, but I just want to get your reaction, Heidi, and very good evening to you, by the way, to a couple of clips that we're going to play of Keir Starmer and what he said at Downing Street earlier today. Let's play the first one.
It is also important to recognise that so often this hatred does not begin with violence. It begins with ideas, with misinformation, tropes and conspiracy theories, and with attitudes that, left unchecked, can take root and spread. So in those spaces where the shoots of anti-Semitism begin to grow, we are stepping in.
The Prime Minister also went on to say that it needs to be tackled. This is also what he said today.
This crisis, it's a crisis for all of us. It's not enough to simply say we stand with Jewish communities. Of course we do, but we must show it and act it. And the responsibility lies with each and every one of us, because it is our fight too. Only by working together can we eradicate anti-Semitism from every corner of society.
Heidi, I don't know about you, but I've sort of two reactions to what Starmer has said. One is, would have been great if you said quite a lot of this, perhaps all of it, perhaps even more than you've said, I don't know, 2.5 years ago, or maybe 2 years ago when he became Prime Minister. When he says, this crisis is a crisis for all of us, it's not enough to simply say we stand with Jewish communities. Of course we do, but we must show it and act on it. Who does he want to act on it? You're the Prime Minister, mate. What do you think, Heidi?
I mean, I think we end up in these sort of never-ending cycles of something terrible happens and then there's a lot of words, very strong words sometimes, but actually on the ground we don't see much change, and then we loop back to something terrible happening again, and then we go through the process all over again. So what we need to see actually is some concrete action. And last time when Heaton Park happened was 7 months ago, when Jews were actually killed. All we got really was the Globalize the Intifada chant being banned in 2 police forces and maybe a few arrests for that. And those were arrests that we actually had to push for ourselves. So, you know, I'm not seeing this sort of across the board action that we need to be taken. And actually the other day, on the day that Jews were stabbed in Calder's Green, there was a visibly Jewish man and his brother out to do some repair work in near Manchester, in Bury. And they were accosted by some men who asked for this purity test, are you a Zionist? Just because they saw that they were Jewish. So we're not seeing, and actually when they reported that to the police recently just came back and said, no crime. Computer says no. And actually that's the sort of on the ground work, the filtering down from the strong words of Parliament to the ground level where Jews are actually being accosted and nothing is happening.
Can I ask you a little bit about Heaton Park, actually? I asked this to Stephen Silverman last night, actually, from the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism. Heaton Park was absolutely horrendous. 2 people died in that attack. What happened in Golders Green, similarly horrendous. Very, very serious, and I'm not saying for a second it wasn't serious, because it absolutely was dreadfully serious, but not as serious as Heaton Park. Why is it that the Golders Green attack, do you think, is getting more attention? And I don't know about you, and I don't want to be churlish about this, but it seems to me, Heidi, that a number of people are actually taking more notice of the second attack than the first attack. Obviously, there's a drumbeat, and there's so many of these different attacks, and anti-Semitism is completely out of control. And there are quite a lot of people, particularly on my Twitter timeline, who are going, anti-Semitism, isn't it dreadful? I'm just thinking, you know, we've been saying this for years, Heidi.
Yeah, this isn't a new problem. I mean, it's been going on, well, for 1,000 years. Yeah. But, you know, this recent upturn after October 7th has been fairly predictable, and all of us have been saying and screaming and shouting, this sort of thing is going to happen, because you look at the foundation that's being laid. You're justifying the Hamas attacks in October 7th on the streets of London, celebrating the murderers and the terrorists. And of course, that's going to normalize violence against Jews. And the whole demonization of Israel is really important here, because it's not just about geopolitics or about defending Israel. It's about, look at what happens. You call something a genocide that isn't a genocide. You start spreading lies about the only Jewish state in the world. You obsessively focus on just that one conflict in exclusion to all others. And then, of course, people are going to start to think, oh, there's no smoke without fire. Maybe we should go and challenge Jews on the street and ask what they think about this. And maybe we should go and hurt Jews that are supporting Israel. Or maybe we're not even going to ask, we're just going to hurt them. So these sorts of things are so predictable and have been so predictable that it's really distressing when nothing happens. And I think that's the worst part of this. You know, the Jewish people I speak to, in particular that man that had this encounter in Bury, being told by the police no crime happened, it's not meeting the threshold or whatever, that is worse than the original crime itself, because that means, okay, Jewish people have armor on, they're kind of, you know, prepared, or they're expecting some kind of terrible thing to happen to them. But then to have the authorities then say, no problem, that is a punch to the gut, because that means you're not protected at all.
We'll see what Keir Starmer comes up with. I wouldn't be surprised in the next 24 hours or something if we hear a bit more on this. It'll be very interesting to see what happens. I just wondered if I could ask you about the Green Party, Heidi, because we have Zach Polanski, for example, saying all sorts of weird and wonderful things about anti-Semitism. He's been on the marches. I know you've done a lot of reporting and citizen journalism from the marches themselves. He says he's never seen anybody in a Hamas headband. He's never seen anybody holding up a placard supporting Hamas or Hezbollah or any other terrorist organisation. It's all friendly. It's all lovely people saying, isn't it dreadful what's happening in the Palestinian territories? It's remarkable that he hasn't seen them, but you have, and you have loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of footage of people who are on those marches who have done that. His deputy is a woman called Rachel Millward. She, according to the Telegraph newspaper, has been sharing conspiracy theories about the Golders Green attack last week, and it says it's pushing a narrative to not talk about the fact that there was a Muslim victim as well. She was also last Thursday on Question Time. Let's just play this clip of the deputy leader of the Green Party, and just have a look, if you're watching on the screen, at the expression, facial expression. We've held it for a few seconds at the end, of the Shadow Environment Secretary, who is Victoria Atkins. I'll get Heidi's reaction in a second. Let's just play this clip.
Lady from the Green Party, you just stated that you've seen racial hatred in the country. Could you please specify where that hatred is coming from?
Not quite sure what you mean. Do you mean from the general public, or...?
Well, she said there's racial hatred in the country, and I'd just like to know where she thinks it's coming from.
I mean, I was talking about the fact that there is a rise in racially motivated crime, that kind of thing. There's more and more hate crimes. There's more reports of people feeling uncomfortable, unsafe.
Yeah.
There's more division.
You said there's racial hatred. Where do you think it's coming from?
OK. What are you getting at exactly?
Well, where does you think this racial hatred is coming from?
What do you mean? What specific sectors of the community?
I can actually say that where I think it's coming from, actually, is that we live in rip-off Britain, and people are having a really, really tough time. They're struggling because their bills are going up. They're struggling because they can't afford their rents. I actually think this is the reality. They're struggling because food is now so expensive, it's eye-watering. What that means is that there's then a tendency to find someone to blame. And I think that there have been narratives. Zia's party is definitely one of these narratives, like the people propagating these narratives, that will point the finger at certain communities to blame them when it is not the fault of those communities. So I actually think that the economic situation, which is disastrous at the moment, is a big reason why hate's on the rise. So that's why we need to solve the economic problems. We need to end rip-off Britain, make sure ordinary people are having a better life day to day, not struggling so much. But we also need to really focus on community cohesion and living well together.
OK, let me...
But you're not prepared to pinpoint where it's coming from. There we go. Thank you.
Yeah, we just held Victoria Atkins' face there at the end for a couple of seconds, because I think she speaks for all of us in that very puzzled expression. Heidi, I don't know if you've noticed how much a loaf of bread costs these days. That's definitely causing anti-Semitism.
I mean, it's typical, isn't it? Because she's just editing out who's being targeted and by whom. And it's just this lack of ability or willingness to talk about the problem, or even self-reflect on the problems coming from your own side of the equation.
Exactly.
That's really getting us into a problem, because we can't address what's going on until you actually identify it.
And there's so many political leaders who just will not do that. I don't think I heard the word Islamism from Keir Starmer today. There's a lot of diagnosing the problem, as you correctly say, but not necessarily in the right direction. There are loads of people who aren't Islamists who are anti-Semites, obviously, but we know where this is coming from. We see it, but there's so little political will to really deal with that. And what I worry is that they'll say, right, more money for the police, more, special units or coppers or whatever to deal with this. And they'll say, let's deal with the consequences of the problem rather than looking at the roots of it, which is obviously a much more difficult issue, but it's one we absolutely have to get a grip of in our society. Because, I'm not Jewish, you are. Anti-Semitism, I can see, completely out of control.
I just have to clarify, I'm not Jewish.
Oh, sorry, apologies, Heidi, I didn't know that. Apologies. Okay.
No, people often think that because I stand up for the Jewish community, and it is very rare for non-Jewish people to do that, and that except for wonderful people like yourself. But that's part of the problem too. My husband's Jewish, my daughter's Jewish, and I'm part of the Jewish community, and I can see what's happening to them and from the inside, and how they're feeling and how they react to these kinds of things. And actually what we need is less talk and more action. Like you say, it's a problem that goes across the board, and actually a lot of Jewish people are saying to me, we don't want the walls to go higher.
Yes.
The community outside those walls to deal with their anti-Semitism and what's happening there in order for us to be safe. It's not, that Jewish man that went out of his community to go to Manchester shouldn't have to have an armed guard with him to do that. It's ridiculous. But that is the kind of situation that people are facing. What's going to happen is that the world gets very small for Jewish people, or they start to go elsewhere. And we do not want to lose our very wonderful Jewish community that's been here for hundreds of years.
Totally agree.
And contributed so much, and is British, actually.
Absolutely.
And it's just deeply unfair for politicians to just look away and turn a blind eye to their own side. We saw the Labour Party actually did tackle some of its own problems, and they did manage to get very far, but those people just then migrated to another political party. And so they're not gone away, they've just become active somewhere else. And the Greens actually embraced all those people that got thrown out of the Labour Party. And that's what we need to do, is we need to stop them having somewhere to go. Let them stay on the fringes where they have no power.
Yeah, well, I worry about the local elections on Thursday, but listen, that's a whole other matter. Heidi, thank you. So apologies for that error there. First rule of journalism: never assume. It makes an ass of you and me. Not you, Heidi, but certainly me. But listen, thank you, Heidi. Heidi is a brilliant campaigner, writer, a campaigner against anti-Semitism, well worth following on social media as well. Just tells me so many things I don't know, and has suggested all sorts of stories and ideas for this programme as well. She's great. She really is brilliant, and thank you to her for that. Great common sense spoken by her. Leslie, further common sense, says Starmer forgets he campaigned for Corbyn to be our next Prime Minister when anti-Semitism flourished in the party and he said nothing. Margaret in Birmingham says the Deputy Leader of the Green Party sounds like Sadiq Khan twice. She said, what do you mean? Quite like Victoria Atkins, by the way, Shadow Environment Secretary. She always backed the farmer, says Margaret in Birmingham. So thank you very much indeed for that. Whatever your thoughts on what Heidi said, whatever you want to say between now and 10 o'clock, give me a ring, pick up the phone, let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. We're going to talk in a second about academics giving £250,000 to decolonise maths, science and geography. The colonial hangover of maths is clearly massive, and Charlotte Braverman has called golf degrees a dud. Is she right? We'll get some thoughts on that from our guests and indeed from you in the next little while between now and 10 o'clock. 0344 499 1000.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you to everybody who's been in touch, including Elisa in Chelmsford, who says, following your excellent interview with Naria, apparently there are 1,500 mosques in the UK. If our police and intelligence services sent an undercover officer to each one on a Friday evening, I wonder how much evidence of incitement to attack the Saturday people and the Sunday people would be found. Very interesting one there from Elisa, and thank you. Also, Jason has been in touch and says, let's see how far Starmer is going to go with this anti-Semitism issue. He's completely backed into a corner politically. If ever there is a time to call out Islamism, it is now, but we just can't see him growing a pair and calling it out publicly. Even when he is now backed into a corner, it will show him up as the spineless, gutless window mannequin that he is. Tell us what you really think, Jason. He also says that Claire Muldoon is a legend and Heidi Backram should be on every channel. We wouldn't be in the mess that we're in if we had foresight of these people like Heidi on our platforms. Very interesting to see how the media are scrutinising Zach Polanski. I don't think it ended well for him over time. Well, we will see. Thanks also to Liam in Accrington, who's enjoying the programme. Thank you, Liam. The Deputy Leader of the Green Party is obviously delusional with that question time statement. Very, very strange. Alex says pro-Palestinian marches were being planned on the 7th of October in the afternoon after the morning. This is the source of the racism. Well, Alex, you're absolutely right that there were calls to the Metropolitan Police for a protest march the following Saturday as the horrendous murder, rape, kidnapping and so on of the 7th of October was happening. And just a final one before we go to my next guest. Michelle says, can we please call a spade a spade? That particular culture will always hate the Jews. They want them gone. They want their land. It's in their book quite clearly. They also hate the rest of us in the West and want our land too. I'm glad you asked the difficult questions, Peter, and thank you for that, Michelle. Much appreciated. Right then, I want to talk about something that may slightly put a smile on her face because it is just absolutely ridiculous. And the comedian and broadcaster Paul Cox is with me now to go through it. Paul, how are you doing? Good evening.
I'm good, thanks, Peter. Yes, this is ridiculous, and I'm looking forward to talking about it.
£250,000 to decolonise maths, science and geography has been branded delusional woke dogma. I mean, quadratic equations clearly are a sign of our horrendous colonial past, are they not?
Well, they're not, but I appreciate what you're saying here. Now, this is an ongoing pattern. By the way, this is being funded by the Economic and Social Research Council, which has a budget of £123 million, of which £250,000 is going to this. And their statement says, and I've got to read this out because it's ridiculous. The study abstract says this project will bring together STEM and geography educators in a collaborative community of decolonial practitioners. Now that is a word soup of Champions League.
What do they think is colonial about maths, science and geography?
Well, they believe that because the maths that we're learning in our curriculum today was constructed, allowed to say the word invented because it existed. We discovered, not we, not you and I, Peter, unfortunately.
Sadly.
But no, we didn't. And but the way it was constructed was during a time where a lot of these people who want to see decolonialism in our education today, hundreds of years after this was ever really a problem, just hate the fact that a lot of these guys were white guys. A lot of these guys are from the establishment they loathe so much, and what they want to do is make sure that the children of tomorrow understand their view. This is all about co-opting these children and brainwashing them not to believe in their history. All their history is bad. If you think about what's happening to white sort of working class boys and girls, they're being disenfranchised by the education system on a very regular basis. They hear every single day the minority groups that they sit alongside being boosted up and told how wonderful they are, versus the message that they are bad. And this is only going to extrapolate that even further. I don't see any good coming from this. £250,000, I guess, to organisations like this isn't a lot of money, but to everybody else is a huge amount of money, and it could go on lots of other things.
What would you say, Paul, to the counterpoint that actually, history exists because people disagree? The study of history exists because people disagree. Is there anything really wrong with saying there are other perspectives on maths, science and geography?
Well, what I would say to that is every person that's arguing against this has been taught maths in this manner. It hasn't made them the person that they loathe. It's It hasn't taught them something different. They learnt maths, 1 + 1 is 2, etc. And by the way, this is all a bit Orwellian.
Or is it?
Well, this is it. This is the point, isn't it? Does 2 + 2 equal 4, or does it equal 5? It depends on what the right and wrong think is. And
it's very interesting you mentioned that, actually, because Lee in Saffron Walden's been in touch and says, can you ask your guest whether decolonised maths gives us different answers? Because if not, then what's the point of the exercise?
That's a great question. And no, it does not give different answers whatsoever. It gives exactly the same answers that we were before. But they're going to create a framework in which teachers can use, and if I guess a student has a question about where the maths come from, they'll be able to explain to them that, you know, it was a dastardly white man some many years ago, part of the empire, and we should all feel very bad about that.
I'd be interested in the geographical aspect of this as well, of geography, because obviously borders change all the time. Names of places are still controversial even to this day. I say Burma, lots of people say Myanmar, for example, which is its legal name, but that recognises the junta that runs it, for example. I mean, geography is political, maths to some degree, perhaps not, I don't know. Is science that political?
Well, it's becoming political if you think about the trans debate, for instance. Because biology is denied, or certainly the teachings that you and I were given about biology and men and women is being denied. So I think and this is it, isn't it? If you can't make a point through debate, if you can't make a point through politics, then where do you go? You go for children. If you can change their mind before they make their mind up, then you can control their views from that point on. You can get them to vote the way you want them to vote. This is not conspiratorial. It's an obvious way to do it. Every authoritarian dictatorship throughout time has done exactly that. That's what I hate to bring up the Nazis, but that's exactly what the Hitler Youth was about. The Hitler Youth was about controlling the youth, so they did certain things as adults that fitted that narrative.
Paul, if you go back to school, would you be doing a degree in golf? What do you make of this?
I don't know about you, Peter. I do play golf, and I'm playing golf tomorrow. Part of me wishes I did. I still love it, but it's a very difficult sport.
Would you do a degree in it?
I wouldn't do a degree in it. However, I do know someone who's not doing a degree in it, but is qualifying to become a golf professional, and it's what they want to do. So on the face of it, because I'm a golf fan, I can understand why something like that would exist. However, is it of any use? To the vast majority of people, no. It's a vocational qualification which they could get via NVQ or whatever the placement is now, High National Diploma or something. I'm not sure what it is now, Peter. But they definitely could. They don't need to earn it via a degree, and therefore laden themselves with the debt that must come with that. They're still going to get a minimum of £20,000 worth of debt.
Oh, far more than that.
As a result of doing a golf degree.
£9 grand a year to do a course. I'm not sniffy about degrees. In fact, I'm sniffy about degrees when it comes to saying people or forcing people into doing degrees they don't need, and actually having a huge amount of debt when they could go and get a vocational qualification or train for a trade.
Yeah, and I think this is what this does, and I think that's what Suella Braverman is driving at here. And of course, this is again, it's political. It all goes back to the Blair Brown years, where we were sold this dream that absolutely everybody should go to university, or that should at least be the aspiration. And as a result, we've got all sorts of universities popping up and all sorts of courses popping up, because if you've got all these people that are willing to pay tens of thousands of pounds a year, you're going to have to create courses for them. Inevitably, you end up with golf.
Yeah, indeed. Well, listen, I hope it goes well tomorrow on the on the greens. Paul Cox is a comedian and broadcaster. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Donna in Newcastle under Lyme said, if I'd known the wrong answers could have been the right answers, I might have passed my maths GCSE. It's a very good point, Donna. Andrew in Salisbury says, I remember about 6 years ago, a Question Time audience member asked the panel, did they think the rise of anti-Semitism was due to the mass influx of Muslims coming from overseas? The useless Fiona Bruce just blanked him, looked a bit sheepish and moved on, says Andrew in Salisbury. We'll take a few calls and then we'll chat to Petri Hoskin about what's coming up on her programme. Plenty still to discuss between now and 10 o'clock here on Talk. Stay.
scum of fueling anti-Semitism?
I don't think he's doing anything to deal with anti-Semitism. The attempt to gaslight the British people and the Jewish community is appalling.
This has to stop. It's almost being normalised, and it's terrifying, and we're sick of it. Enough's enough.
Don't be shocked, and don't you bloody dare claim to be shocked or upset or care about Jewish people being stabbed on the streets of our capital city in broad daylight. This is on you.
Kush Jumbo and Peter Capaldi!
It just so happens that it's all "you're amazing."
Right. Paul White! Sir Lenny Henry!
I was face down and the dog sniffed my crotch. It was very, very embarrassing.
Staying out for the summer.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to Martin in Lichfield, who says, "Good evening, Peter." Good evening, Martin. So maths is the latest to get the decolonisation treatment. Well, time to bring in Diane Abacus Abbott. That will definitely give a different perspective. 2 + 2 = 5. Very enjoyable show tonight, says Martin. Thank you very much, Martin, for that. Diane Abbott, I'm afraid, will never quite be forgotten for her maths on that particular interview, which was, believe it or not, nearly 10 years ago now. Khaled is in Leicester and wants to talk about this horrendous case of Sarah Sharif. Khaled, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Yeah, I think everyone should be is shaken to the core by what the details of this case. I mean, I was going through it previously, and when you open it up again, it brings back all those memories, and it's traumatic. Even the listening to that is traumatic. We can't imagine what the poor child must have been through. And I think, this the system and the adults that were there to protect her, the institutions, they failed.
They did fail, and they're continuing to fail, Khaled, aren't they?
Yeah, they continue to fail. That's why there is a shake-up of the law. These laws need to be amended. If a child cannot be protected, then we are failing society, and we are failing our future generations. But the question comes as well, that we are outraged at the system, or the failings of the system, and we are traumatized by the case, and we should be, and we should be shedding tears at how has it come to this, that a child in our midst is gone through this.
I agree with every word you've said, Khaled, which isn't always the case when we talk on air. I just want to ask you about the cultural aspect of this, particularly that the father used a headscarf to disguise the child's injuries that he had inflicted. Do you think that we need to put aside cultural sensitivities, worrying about being called racist, when we actually are protecting children?
Look, protection of children is paramount above everything else. Protection of an innocent child is paramount above everything else. You see, the sad thing we have is that we should be traumatized, we should be sad, we should be angry at the system. But at the same time, as we know, we've been through this before, Peter, you know that, when the Palestinian children have been through that trauma, we have selective empathy. On the one child, we'll say, yes, it is traumatic, but at the same time, when
I just don't agree with that. I don't think there's any place for selective empathy. Certainly, I mean, all children who are going through abuse or war need to have our sympathy, Khaled. In this country, how do we sort the care system? How do we get Surrey County Council to do what they should do?
You see, the thing is, Peter, look, with all due respect, the thing is, look, we have to have a sincere empathy. I mean, you say, about the Palestinian children. If we can't shed a tear for the Palestinian children, then we have selective justice, selective law and order, selective empathy. And we are kidding ourselves that, yes, we do care, but we don't. Otherwise, we'd be in those marches ourselves saying, no, this law is wrong.
Khaled, no. I mean, listen, the early part of your call, totally agree with that. You can absolutely care about Palestinian children. You can absolutely care about children in Sudan and in Nigeria who are victims of terrible wars without joining a march that glorifies terrorism.
No, but it's not glory.
It is, Colin. I wasn't going to bring this up. You brought it up. The fact is that there are people supporting Hamas and Hezbollah who are terrorist organisations on those marches. That's what's happening.
I've never seen.
You've never seen it? Well, it exists. Have a look online, Khaled, and you'll see exactly what happened. Look at Heidi Backram's Twitter feed, for example. Janice is in Essex. Just quickly before we speak to Peter Hoskin, Janice, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hiya, Peter. Lovely on Jeremy Vine this morning.
Thank you very much.
You were brilliant.
Thank you.
You were brilliant. You kept the mantra. Kept it on it.
That's it.
What I would like to say is I just listened to what you said, but I think it is 1 in 10 children. It doesn't matter what background they are. 1 in 10 children are being sexually abused.
It's dreadful. It's horrendous. How do we fix it, Janice? How do we get a grip of it?
I was one of those.
I'm so sorry to hear that, Janice.
Well, it's made me the person I am today. But I do think we are not letting one group of people. We're letting all children. So, that young man that just spoke, I understand what he's saying. But it is all children. It doesn't matter what race you are or whatever.
Of course.
It's all children.
You're absolutely right, Janice. It's a huge problem for all of society. I'd love to talk to you more about that on another occasion, and please do ring me back. But I'm going to have a chat with Petra Hoskin about what's coming up on her programme. Petra, how are you doing? What's coming up?
I'm good. Right, what's coming up? Well, we know that Marco Rubio took the press conference.
Yes, we saw a bit of that, yeah.
Caroline Levitt's, of course, gone on maternity leave now. It seemed to be quite a jolly affair, actually. But what's interesting was what was said and what wasn't said. So we're going to be looking at this ceasefire.
Doesn't seem to be much of a ceasefire.
No, and also where is this bar? The Americans keep saying, well, they haven't crossed the bar yet, so we don't know what's quite going on. We've also found out that a cargo ship has been hit by a projectile, and there were reports earlier of some deaths. We can't confirm that, but if that is the case, is that the bar? So we're going to be looking at that, and what could kick this back into a full-on war? Will it just be Donald Trump's impatience? What could happen?
Petra Hoskin often asks that question, where is the bar? She'll be finding that out this evening.
I've normally got a good nose for it there, Peter. I can normally find one. Also, we're going to be looking at this fascinating story about Christian Bruckner, the convicted rapist who's suspected of kidnapping Madeleine McCann, and the fact that the Met want him extradited now from Germany, which of course can't happen since Brexit.
That's right.
Because they won't extradite to non-EU countries. But what have they got? What do they think they know? So we're going to be talking about that. That's also going to be talked back, because how long are we going to keep looking for Madeleine McCann? How long is this going to go on? And I've got a name for you. Have you ever heard of Andrew Gosden?
Rings a bell, yeah. Who's that?
He is a 14-year-old boy that went missing almost exactly the same time as Madeleine McCann. Still not been found. But he's not in the news. This is the point I always come back to, is there are other children that are missing.